archaeological evidence tells us stories that Hollywood never bothered to explore. Clad Lotharios lounging by gilded pools, their lives a perpetual festival of incense and adoration. The reality of an Egyptian priest, particularly during the New Kingdom, roughly 1551 to 70 BCE, a far cry from the silver screen's romanticized fiction. Imagine, if you will, stepping into the sandals of Imhotep, of the magnificent temple of Karnak in Thebes, circa 1350 BCE, during the reign of Amenhotep III, is not one of leisure, but of rigorous discipline, meticulous ritual, and an unending cycle of sacred duties. Before the first hint of dawn, the air still thick with the cool, damp breath of the Nile, the stone floor of your modest dwelling, the temple complex rough beneath your bare feet, a faint, earthy smell of dried mud and river reeds permeates the air, not to the gentle chime of an alarm, but to the distant, echoing cry of a jackal, a sound that has heralded the coming of day for millennia. Your body aches not from overindulgence, but from the previous day's labors. Woven reed mat you slept on offers little comfort. Filtering into your small room comes from a narrow slit high on the wall, casting a pale, ethereal glow. Faint murmur of other priests already stirring, the soft shuffling of feet, the rustle of linen. Task is purification. You make your way to the temple's ablution chambers, a series of small, cool rooms lined with smooth, the water drawn from a sacred well within the temple precinct is surprisingly cold, sending a jolt through your system. You scrub your body meticulously with a coarse linen cloth, the friction invigorating your skin. The scent of natron, a natural salt mixture, strong in the air used for cleansing and purification rituals. You then don your priestly attire, a simple white linen kilt, starched to a crisp perfection, and a clean, bleached tunic. The linen feels cool and smooth against your skin, a stark contrast to the rough woolens of the common laborer. You tie a simple linen cord around your waist, the knot a familiar. Hours turn to days as you begin your daily rounds within the vast, sprawling temple of Karnak. Place is overwhelming, even to you, a lifelong servant. The towering pylons, scenes of pharaohs smiting their enemies, loom like colossal guardians. The hypostyle hall, forest of 134 immense columns, each adorned with intricate hieroglyphs and vibrant frescoes, swallows the morning light, sphere of awe and reverence. The air here is heavy with the scent of frankincense and myrrh, ornate censers carried by older priests. The smoke curls upwards, shafts of sunlight that pierce the high clerestory window as in creating dancing patterns on the stone floor. Rhythmic chanting of the morning prayers, a low, sonorous hum that seems to vibrate through the very stones of the temple. Your primary duty is the care of the god Amun-Re, the king of the gods. This is not a symbolic gesture, it is a literal physical service. Inner sanctuary, a place of utmost sanctity, accessible only to the highest ranking priests. The doors, cedar wood inlaid with ebony and ivory, are heavy, requiring the combined strength of several men to open. Inside, with the intoxicating aroma of exotic perfumes, the statue of Amun-Re, a magnificent representation crafted from solid gold and lapis lazuli, gleams in the dim light. You approach with bowed head, pounding with a mixture of reverence and trepidation. Your hands, though steady, feel the weight of responsibility. Re-accept our humble service. You murmur, your voice barely a whisper. You carefully remove the god's daily garments, finest linen and adorned with precious stones. This is a delicate operation and movement performed with utmost precision. You then wash the statue with perfumed water, liquid cascading over the gleaming gold. The texture of the smooth, under your fingertips is a constant reminder of the divine presence. You then anoint the statue with sacred oils, the rich, leaving a sheen on its surface. The smell is intoxicating, a blend of lotus, rose, and myrrh, as you prepare the god's daily offerings. This involves a meticulous selection of food and drink. Freshly baked bread, their crusts golden brown and still warm to the touch. You select ripe figs, bursting with sweet, sticky juice, and plump dates, their sweetness a gift from the fertile lands. Also offerings of wine, fragrant and potent, and bowls of milk, pure and white. Each item is carefully inspected for perfection. A single blemish, a bruised fruit, would be an insult to the divine. Pottery, as you arrange the offerings on golden platters, is a familiar sound. The aroma of the food is tantalizing, a stark contrast to the simple fare you yourself will consume later. Emotions for the afternoon ritual. The voice is sharp, commanding. It belongs to Nacht, the high priest. Stern demeanor belays a deep devotion. His linen kilt is immaculate, his shaved head gleaming. You turn, bowing your head. Yes, the sacred wine and water are ready. Night scrutinizes you, his gaze intense, and the purification of the sacred vessels. They must be spotless. Remember the incident with the faulty libation bowl last month. Ree's displeasure is not to be trifled with. They have been cleansed thrice, high priest, polished with the finest linen. You reply, your voice steady. You can feel the faint tremor in your own hands, residual effect of the early morning rituals. Night nods curtly. Good. The pharaoh's envoy is expected this afternoon. Are immaculate. The scent of lotus must be strong. Inform the scribes that the hymn to the sun must be recited with exceptional clarity. He turns and strides away, echoing in the vastness of the hall. Hours turn to days as you supervise the cleaning of the temple's vast courtyards. Temple servants, their bodies glistening with sweat, scrub the flagstone floors with brushes made of palm fiber. Meticulously remove any dust or debris, their movements synchronized and efficient. Placement of large earthenware pots filled with water, from which fragrant lotus blossoms will be arranged to perfume the air. The scent of the blossoms, delicate and sweet, mingles with the ever-present incense. You can feel the heat of the sun on your skin, reminder of the celestial power you serve. The distant sounds of the city, the braying of donkeys, the shouts of merchants, cries of children are muted here, filtered through the massive temple walls. Later, your fellow priests for a simple meal of bread, onions, and dried fish, eaten in communal silence. The food is plain, nourishing, and entirely devoid of the rich aromas you've been handling all day. You sit on the floor, the rough texture a familiar sensation. Sensation is limited to matters of temple administration and ritual. There is no idle chatter, no gossip, focused discussion of sacred duties. I discovered in archives papyrus scroll detailing the daily schedule of a new kingdom priest. Teams were not merely suggestions but strict commandments. Failure to adhere could result in severe punishments, exclusion from temple services, public humiliation, or even excommunication. The life was one of constant vigilance, ensuring that every detail, every scent, every sound was perfectly aligned with the divine will. It was a demanding existence, from the easy opulence portrayed in modern media. As the sun begins its descent, casting long across the temple complex, you prepare for the evening rituals. The day's work is far from over. The cycle of service continues, a testament to the unwavering dedication required of those who served the gods of ancient Egypt. Weariness settling deep into your bones. but also a quiet sense of accomplishment. Tomorrow, the ritual will begin anew. As you prepare for sleep, the scent of incense still clinging to your linen. The true story of an Egyptian priest is one of relentless dedication, a life lived in service, not in luxury, that would test the mettle of any modern individual, a life where the divine demands absolute commitment, first light of dawn to the deepest hours of the night. Your breathing slows as we prepare to explore what life truly meant in another time. Sarcophagi and the whispered curses of pharaohs. We are venturing into the heart of a living, breathing civilization, where the divine was woven into the very fabric of existence. You find yourself standing on the eastern bank of the Nile, the sun a benevolent golden orb climbing the impossibly blue sky. The air, thick and humid, carries the scent of lotus blossoms, and something earthier, more primal, the fertile mud of the Nile itself. The world around you evolves. You are in Thebes, approximately 1400 BCE, during the height of the New Kingdom. This isn't a dusty ruin, it's a vibrant metropolis, a spiritual nexus teeming with life. Before you, stretching towards the horizon, rise the colossal pylons of the Temple of Karnak. So vast it dwarfs anything you've ever witnessed. The rough, hewn granite, warmed by the sun, hums with an ancient energy. You can almost feel the weight of millennia pressing down, the echoes of countless prayers and rituals reverberating through the stone is overwhelming, designed to inspire awe, to remind every mortal of their place in the grand cosmic order. Tourist here, not an observer from a distant future. You are, for the purposes of this journey, a novice, a young man preparing to enter the priesthood. Your simple linen kilt, rough against your skin, is clean but plain. Your feet are bare, gritty dust, and the occasional smooth, cool stone underfoot. Around you, the sounds are a symphony of ancient life, chanting of priests from a distant courtyard, the braying of donkeys laden with goods, of 1,000 voices speaking a language you are only beginning to grasp. A splash of oars as feluccas glide silently on the Nile. You can taste the dust on your lips, breeze caressing your sun-kissed skin. The temple complex is a labyrinth of courtyards, hyperstyle halls, sacred sanctuaries. Sunlight streams through openings in the massive stone roofs, towering columns carved with hieroglyphs that tell stories of gods and kings. You feel a tremor of apprehension mixed with profound reverence. This is not a job, it's a calling, a life dedicated to serving the gods. Balance, my art. The world around you evolves. Your guide, a senior priest named Horemheb, approaches. His skin deeply tanned and etched with the lines of devotion. His head is shaved, gleaming in the sunlight, simple, pristine white linen robe, cinched at the waist. His eyes, dark and piercing, seems to stretch back to the dawn of time. He carries a small, intricately carved wooden staff with a small leper's lily scarab. Welcome, young one, Horemheb says, his voice a low, resonant rumble. He speaks in a dialect that, with effort, you can understand. The path you have chosen is arduous. The rewards are beyond mortal comprehension. You bow your head respectfully. I am ready to serve. Your voice cracks slightly, a testament to your nerves. He offers a faint smile. Readiness is a journey. Come, your initiation begins today. He leads you through a series of smaller courtyards, its own distinct atmosphere. In one, you see scribes meticulously copying religious texts onto papyrus scrolls. Reed, pens a constant, soft sound. The air here is dry and carries the faint, sweet scent of ink. In another, acolytes meticulously cleaning bronze cult statues, their movements precise and reverent, feels smooth beneath their cloth, wrapped hands. The world around you evolves. Horemheb stops before a low, leading into a dimly lit chamber. This is where you will spend your days. The House of Life, they call it. Here, knowledge is preserved and the sacred rites are studied. You step inside and the air shifts. It's cooler, quieter, papyrus and a faint, musky incense. Shelves laden with scrolls line the walls. Reaching towards the high, vaulted ceiling comes from oil lamps, casting flickering shadows that dance on the hieroglyphs. Soft rustle of papyrus as a scribe nearby unrolls a document. Your first task, Horemheb continues, to a stack of scrolls on a low table, is to learn the hymns to Amun-Ra. They are the foundation of our worship. Also assist in the preparation of offerings. This means understanding the precise measurements of grain, the quality of the incense, freshness of the fruit. He picks up a small clay pot. This is natron. We use it for purification. You will learn to grind it with the sacred oils. It is not glamorous work, but the gods demand perfection in all things. You examine the natron, dry and slightly gritty between your fingers. You can almost taste its mineral sharpness on the air. You feel a pang of doubt. It is far removed from the imagined grandeur of the priesthood. Horemheb seems to read your thoughts. Mistake simplicity for lack of importance. The gods are present in the smallest details. Perfectly prepared offering can appease a deity. A careless one can incur their displeasure. This is why you must be diligent, meticulous. He gestures to another young man, perhaps your age, meticulously arranging a platter of figs and dates. He has been here for 2 years. Senefer, brother, the proper way to present these offerings. Senefer looks up, his face earnest. A smudge of dirt on his cheek and his linen tunic is slightly askew. Of course, Horemheb, welcome. He smiles warmly, be unblemished, and the dates arranged in a spiral pointing towards the sun disk. He demonstrates, and precise. You notice the subtle scent of honey from the dates. And remember, Senefer adds, his voice softer, the gods see not just the offering, but the intention behind it. Your mind must be clear, your heart pure. You watch them, every detail. You realize that being a priest isn't about wielding power. It's about immense responsibility, constant, unglamorous service. The heat outside, the bustling crowds, Karnak, it all fades as you focus on the delicate art of preparing an offering. It requires patience, detail, and a deep understanding of the divine. The world around you evolves. As the sun begins its descent, sky in hues of orange and purple, Horemheb leads you to a small, Spartan cell. This will be your dwelling. You will rise before dawn and sleep after dusk. Your life is no longer your own. To the service of Amun-Ra and the well-being of Kemet, he places a rough woolen blanket on a straw-filled mat. Tomorrow, work begins. You will learn to purify yourself, to wear the sacred garments, and to assist in the daily rituals. It will be demanding. You will be hungry, tired, and perhaps at times you will question your path. But remember why you are here. Remember the stories of the gods and the order they represent. He turns to leave, then pauses at the doorway. I discovered in archives, scribe, a testament to his humble life. He wrote not of grand battles or royal decrees. Quiet satisfaction he found in meticulously copying a single hymn, ensuring its preservation for generations to come. That is the true spirit of our service. You are left alone in the quiet cell, the sounds of the temple fading into a gentle hum. Is still warm, carrying the distant scent of incense. You can feel the rough texture of the stone walls, the scratchiness of the woolen blanket. You close your eyes, the images of the day, the towering pylons, the sacred scrolls, faces of Horemheb and Senefer replaying in your mind. The path ahead is long, and the demands are immense. You feel a deep sense of both trepidation and a nascent, quiet resolve. Tomorrow you will learn the true meaning of devotion, prepared offering at a time. Every historian has that one period that captures their imagination completely. This is mine. From the dust motes dancing in the sunlight of forgotten tombs, peeling back layers of modern misconception, to the vibrant, a city like Thebes, where life pulsed with a rhythm both familiar and alien. Now, beyond the grand pronouncements of pharaohs and the imposing silhouettes of temples, we turn our gaze inwards, those sacred halls, men whose lives were woven into the very fabric of existence. Gilded idols you might picture. The reality of an Egyptian priest was a tapestry of duties, far more intricate and demanding than any Hollywood script could ever portray. You wouldn't last a day. Time moved differently when you consider the sheer breadth of responsibilities shouldered by these individuals. Priest in ancient Egypt, particularly during the New Kingdom, was not a singular designation. It was a multifaceted role, encompassing religious devotion, yes, but also a significant administrative burden, a profound social influence, deep commitment to scholarship. Imagine waking before the first sliver of dawn painted the eastern sky, the air still cool and carrying the faint, earthy scent of the Nile. Your first task isn't a sermon, but a meticulous purification. Disrobe, shedding your linen kilt and sandals, and immerse yourself in a ritual bath. The water, drawn from a sacred well, the smooth stone of the basin cool beneath your hands. The silence would be broken only by the gentle lapping of water and perhaps the distant cry of a ibis. Then, the pristine white linen. This wasn't merely clothing. It was a symbol of purity, of separation from the mundane. Weave would feel smooth, against slightly starch, perhaps slightly. You would then proceed to the temple. Pylons of Karnak or Luxor looming before you, their reliefs whispering tales of gods and kings. The morning ritual, the the opening of the day. This involved waking the god's statue with fresh garlands of lotus and papyrus, their scent sweet and intoxicating. You would offer incense, the fragrant smoke curling upwards towards the painted ceiling, and recite hymns, your voice echoing in the vast, silent hypostyle hall. Just piety, it was a daily re-enactment of cosmic order, a vital act to ensure the sun would rise, the Nile would flood, and the world would continue its steady course. But the divine service was only one facet. As a priest, you were also a bureaucrat. Wealth of the temples, accumulated through offerings, land grants, and royal patronage, needed to be managed. Hours in a small, sun-drenched chamber, poring over papyrus scrolls, recording grain harvests from temple estates, tracking livestock, overseeing the distribution of rations to temple staff, scribes, artisans, laborers, and other priests. Texture of the papyrus would be familiar under your fingertips, the ink a dark, earthy pigment staining your fingers, thick with the dry scent of aged paper and the faint aroma of oil lamps. Be discussing inventory with a fellow priest, your voices low and measured, the rustle of scrolls a constant backdrop. Brother Imhotep, you might say, your voice rapey from the early morning chants. The yield from the western fields is down by 10%. Attributes it to a lack of sufficient irrigation during the inundation. Imhotep's face was etched with the subtle lines of constant study and responsibility, would nod slowly, his eyes, dark and intelligent. Figures. We must consult the records of the past 5 years, brother. If this is a recurring issue, petition the vizier for additional labor to reinforce the canals before the next flood. Prosperity of the House of a Moon depends on our careful stewardship. This isn't just about religion, economic survival, and the well-being of thousands. Time moves differently when you consider the social fabric of Egypt. Isolated figures, they were pillars of their communities. They acted as judges in local disputes, pronouncements carrying significant weight. They were healers, possessing knowledge of herbs and remedies passed down through generations. The scent of drying herbs, pungent and medicinal, fill their living quarters. They were also educators responsible for training the next generation of scribes and priests. A young acolyte, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and trepidation, struggling to decipher a hieroglyphic inscription. You would patiently guide his hand, the smooth, cool stone of the temple wall beneath your touch, filled with the murmur of instruction. I discovered in archives, through deciphering funerary texts and administrative papyri, priests often specialized. There were lector priests who were the scholars responsible for memorizing and reciting religious texts. Ritual priests who performed the daily ceremonies. There were also priests who managed the temple estates, the granaries. Each role required a different set of skills. All were bound by the overarching duty to serve the gods and maintain Mayat, the cosmic order. Consider a conversation you might have with a physician priest, perhaps named Senefer, who also serves in the temple of Ptah. Craftsman. You might find him in a shaded courtyard, the scent of medicinal herbs mingling with the sweet perfume of blooming jasmine. You're both dressed in the simple of your station. Senefer, you begin, your voice carrying the weariness of a long day. I confess, these accounts grows heavier with each passing moon. My mind feels dulled by numbers. Senefer, what looks like saffron, smiles gently, and mine, brother, with the intricacies of the human body. I spent this morning tending to a weaver's son, his lungs clouded by the dust of his craft. I gave him a decoction of thyme and honey as old as our civilization. The impotent herbs cannot mend a spirit broken by hardship. He gestures to a small pot of honey, its golden hue catching the sunlight. Sometimes the greatest healing comes not from the gods. Simple acts of care we extend to one another. This is a far cry from the aloof, detached figures often depicted. Lee's aspect was particularly demanding. Priests were the custodians of knowledge. They studied astronomy to predict celestial events, the agricultural calendar and religious festivals. They were mathematicians and accountants, architects and historians. Your evenings, by the flickering light of an oil lamp, painstakingly copying ancient wisdom onto fresh papyrus, scratching softly against the surface. The air would be still and quiet. The only sounds your own breathing and the distant chirping of crickets. You'd be translating texts, a treatise on the movement of stars, or a commentary on the pyramid texts, the oldest religious writings in the world. Pursuit of knowledge was not an academic hobby. It was a sacred duty, a way of understanding and preserving the divine order. Reality, a life of constant vigilance, of meticulous detail, of intellectual rigor, and of deep, abiding faith that demanded not just devotion, but also competence in a dizzying array of disciplines. You would be a farmer, a financier, a teacher, a healer, and a scholar, all while upholding the sacred trust of communing with the divine. Sheer volume and complexity of these tasks, the constant pressure to maintain purity and precision, unwavering commitment to the gods and the state, it's a burden that, for most modern individuals, would be utterly overwhelming. A day, as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the temple courtyards, prepare for the evening rites. The cooling air would carry the scent of evening blossoms and the faint lingering aroma of incense. A relentless cycle of service and administration would draw to a close. Responsibilities of a priest were never truly over. Tomorrow, the cycle would begin anew, demanding the same dedication, multifaceted expertise. And as you prepare to rest, you might find yourself contemplating the next great challenge, rituals of the funerary cult, a realm where the priest's role became even more profound and perhaps even more daunting. We're going to experience history not from textbooks, but from the inside. You've walked through the dusty ruins, the weight of millennia in the air, and glimpsed the lives of those who served the gods. Part 1 peeled back the layers of Hollywood myth, reality of ancient Egyptian priests beyond the sensationalized portrayals. Part 2 transported you to the heart of Thebes, pulsing with life and devotion. Part 3 began to unravel the intricate tapestry of the priesthood, responsibilities and diverse roles within its structure. Now in Part 4 we delve deeper into the very sinews of this sacred organization. We're going to explore the temple hierarchy, the ranks, the rituals, the sheer dedication required to serve. Prepare to feel the cool linen against your skin, to smell the sweet incense, and to hear the low hum of ancient prayers. This is not just history, this is an immersion. Day by day, you learn. You awaken before the first blush of dawn, the air still cool and carrying the faint scent of the Nile. Your rough linen tunic and starch stiff feels alien against your skin, a stark contrast to the softer fabrics you've known. You are a waybet. And the ritual purification you underwent yesterday, the shaving of every hair on your body, the careful cleansing with natron, memory, the cold, smooth stone of the temple floor presses against your bare feet as you make your way through the dimly lit corridors of the Karnak temple complex. Towering pylons and sacred chambers, the only light comes from oil lamps, shadows that play tricks on your eyes. The silence is profound, only by the distant call of a bird or the soft rustle of your own movements. Your task today as a junior waybet in the morning ritual of the god Amun-Ra. Day by day you learn you are one of hundreds, perhaps thousands, priests serving within this vast religious institution. The hierarchy is as rigid and unyielding as the granite of the temple walls. Performing the most menial tasks are the Efkari Heb, the scribes and ritualists. Lee copied sacred texts and oversaw the proper recitation of hymns. Above them are the Efhem Netja, the servants of the god, who were the primary officiants, the daily rituals of adoration and sustenance for the divine statue within the inner sanctuary. The Efhem Netja were further divided into ranks, the Devhem Netja Kenet, or high priests, who held administrative and spiritual authority. Netja, the chief priests of a particular deity or temple section. Siahem Netja are like the venerable Tahamhab, a man whose face is etched with decades of devotion. Deep rumble as he consults with the overseer of the treasury. He moves with an aura of profound authority, adorned with subtle gold embroidery that signifies his elevated status. Day by day you learn is of a Web Netja, a pure one of the god, who oversees the daily ablutions and dressing of the divine image. Today, Netja, a man named Senefer, his skin tanned to a deep bronze from years spent in the sun-drenched courtyards. Peculiarly stern, he notices a speck of dust on your clean tunic, and his voice, though not loud, carries the weight of disapproval. Suggestion, war waybat. He states, his gaze sharp. It is the very essence of our service. Demand it. You feel a flush of embarrassment, your hands instinctively brushing at your tunic. This is a constant lesson in vigilance and an unwavering commitment to cleanliness, both physical and spiritual. Believed that even the slightest impurity could anger the deities, disrupting the cosmic order or smart. Day by day, the physical demands are as significant as the spiritual. You spend hours standing, moving with precise, prescribed gestures, focused on the intricate details of each ritual. You learn the names of the sacred oils, precise proportions of the offerings, loaves of bread, jars of beer, cuts of meat, and the correct way to present them. Practice the ancient chants, the melodic rise and fall of the words that have been passed down through generations. Incense, frankincense, and myrrh hangs heavy in the air, a constant, soporific perfume that permeates everything. To distinguish the subtle differences in the textures of the temple linen, the coolness of the polished stone, the sunlight filtering through the high clerestory windows. Day by day, you learn. Amun Rayat Karnak is not merely a place of worship, it is a vast economic and administrative center. Vast estates collected taxes, oversaw granaries, and even acted as scribes and judges. Here, the murmur of merchants in the outer courtyards, the clatter of tools from the artisan workshops attached to the temple, cattle brought as offerings. The high priests, the Devhem, Netjert, often came from noble families, secured through lineage and influence, much like positions of power in any society, even today. I discovered in archives that some of these high priests wielded immense political power, advising the pharaoh himself. One such figure, before he became pharaoh, served as a high priest, demonstrating the intertwined nature of religious and political authority. There are specialized priesthoods as well. These sek were, or great field priests, responsible for the temple's agricultural lands, and the Hem, Netja, Kuv, priests dedicated to the cult of the dead, proper funerary rites for the deceased. Each role requires specific knowledge and training. You observe a Sakit were priest, his hands calloused from working the earth, discussing irrigation channels with a temple administrator. Concerns a stark contrast to the abstract theological discussions you might overhear amongst the higher ranks. Day by day, the conversations you witness are often hushed, filled with a reverence that borders on awe. You hear two senior priests discussing the upcoming festival of Opet, grand procession where the statue of Amun Ra would be moved from Karnak to Luxor Temple. The logistical complexities, the required offerings, the precise timing, it's a monumental undertaking requiring the coordination of thousands of individuals. The preparations must be flawless. One murmurs, his brow furrowed. The people's faith depends on the God's favor. Favor depends on our perfect service. A day by day, you learn. The weight of this responsibility settles upon you. A small cog in a vast, divine machine, the constant scrutiny, the absolute adherence to rules, the sheer effort required to maintain the illusion of divine presence. It's exhausting, both mentally and physically. You start to saying goes, you wouldn't last a day. It's not just about knowing the rituals, embodying a state of being, a purity and dedication that is almost unimaginable to us today. Air you breathe feels charged with sacred energy. Simple act of walking through these halls requires a profound shift in consciousness. As the sun begins its descent, casting long through the hypostyle hall, you prepare for the evening rituals, the cycle of service continuing unbroken. Morrow brings new lessons, new challenges, and the ever-present awareness of the divine gaze. drift back to an age when the very concept of normal was radically different. Gentle alarm of a digital clock or the soft glow of dawn filtering through modern windows. Your awakening, even call it that, is a brutal, immediate immersion into a world that demands absolute surrender. The air, the sun has dared to breach the eastern horizon, is thick and cool, carrying the faint, earthy scent of the Nile and the distant incense from temples already stirring. You are not gently roused, yanked from slumber, by an internal clock honed by years of unwavering discipline, by the celestial movements and the demands of the divine. The rough linen of your sleeping palate scrapes against your skin, a stark contrast to the soft, yielding comfort you might associate with sleep today. There is no lingering in bed, stretching out languidly. Action is immediate, absolute. With each passing moment, the darkness outside your humble dwelling, a simple, whitewashed room attached to the temple complex, begins to yield to the faintest hint of twilight. Time for contemplation of the day's possibilities, but a time for rigorous, almost violent purification. Your body, with the remnants of sleep, is your first and most crucial temple. You rise, your bare feet meeting the cool, smooth stone floor. The silence is profound, broken only by the rustling of your own movements and perhaps the distant, mournful cry of a desert bird. The first act is the cleansing of the mouth. You reach for a small clay pot filled with water, sacred well within the temple grounds, its taste pure and cool. You rinse, swish, and spit, not just the lingering taste of sleep, but any impurity that might have settled upon your tongue overnight. Cursory rinse, it is a deliberate ritualistic act. Next, your eyes, a drop of kohl, a dark mineral-based cosmetic, applied to the inner corners of your eyelids. This serves not only to ward off the harsh glare of the sun to come, but also to sharpen your spiritual vision, to help you perceive the divine even in the mundane. The kohl stings slightly, a sharp sensation that jolts you fully into awareness. Your hands, still a little stiff, reach for the linen garments, the elaborate robes of ceremony. Not yet. These are simple, clean, white linen kilts, the traditional attire of a priest. Self is a testament to the meticulous care taken in its preparation. It is bleached to an almost blinding white, symbol of purity, and woven with a fineness that speaks of skilled hands and dedication. The texture is smooth, almost silken, a welcome sensation after the rough palate. You tie the kilt securely, the fabric cool and breathable. Continues. You move to a designated ablution area, a shallow basin of water. Here, you wash your hands and feet, scrubbing away any trace of the earthly world. This is not about hygiene in the modern sense. It is about spiritual cleansing. Part of your body must be deemed worthy to approach the divine. The water is cool, touch a constant reminder of the life-giving Nile, the source of all sustenance and purity. Most vital and often overlooked aspects of priestly life was the shaving of the body. To maintain the highest degree of purity, priests were expected to be entirely hairless. This meant daily shaving of the head, face, and all other bodily hair. The sheer time and effort this would require, the constant vigilance against any regrowth. You would use a small bronze razor, keen sharpness. The process is painstaking, requiring a steady hand and absolute focus. The scraping sound of the metal against your skin, smell of the oil used as a lubricant. It's a sensory experience that underscores the dedication involved. Discovered in archives detailing temple inventories that these razors were highly prized, polished bronze and sometimes even inlaid with precious stones, indicating their importance. With each passing moment, struggle against the lingering pull of sleep, against the natural inclination towards comfort, intensifies. Battle of the day, a battle against your own physical being. You are learning, even in these pre-dawn hours. A priest is not one of ease. It is a path of constant self-mastery. Your first interaction of the day might be with a junior acolyte, a young boy or adolescent just beginning his journey within the priesthood. He approaches with a deferential bow, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and perhaps a touch of fear. "High priest," he murmurs, his voice barely a whisper. "The morning offering awaits your blessing." His linen is perhaps a little less pristine, his movements a little less assured. You nod, your gaze steady. Has the sacred fire been tended, Imhotep? You inquire, combat firm, yes, most honored. He replies, his small chest puffing out slightly with pride, brightly. This brief exchange, though seemingly simple, hierarchical structure and the immediate responsibilities that begin even before sunrise. With each passing moment, way towards the inner sanctum, the heart of the temple, the air grows warmer as you approach, carrying the rich, burning incense, myrrh, frankincense, and other sacred resins. The walls of the temple, cool and solid to the touch, are adorned with hieroglyphs and depictions of the gods, their silent presence a constant reminder of your purpose. The soft of oil lamps cast long dancing shadows, creating an atmosphere of profound reverence. You might encounter another priest, his face etched with the wisdom of years spent in service. He stops, his eyes meeting yours. "Is generous this season, is it not?" he remarks, his voice a low rumble. "Endidida, Father," you respond, and continue to bless Kemet with their favor. He offers a faint smile. "May your prayers be heard, my son, for their well-being." This brief, almost casual conversation, the priest's role not just as a servant of the gods, but as a vital link between the divine and the mortal realm, responsible for the prosperity and well-being of the entire community, responsibility that would be crushing by modern standards. The rituals continue to elevate your spirit and prepare you for the day's duties. You might be required to partake in a ritualistic meal, offering of bread and water, consumed with mindful gratitude. The taste is simple, unadorned, contrast to the elaborate feasts of the pharaoh. But even in its simplicity, there is a profound spiritual significance. Is sustenance the yes, but it is also a symbol of detachment from worldly pleasures. As the sun finally begins its ascent, sky with hues of orange and gold, you are already hours into your day, your body and mind cleansed, your spirit focused, to face the demands of serving the gods, a task that began long before the world outside had even stirred. Early morning discipline, this relentless pursuit of purity, is not an exaggeration, foundation of what it meant to be a priest in ancient Egypt. You wouldn't last a day. With each passing moment of the pre-dawn rituals gives way to the structured duties of the temple. Contemplation of the early hours is replaced by the hum of activity, the chanting of hymns, meticulous preparation of offerings. Your journey into the heart of the priesthood is only just beginning. Steps will reveal the outward manifestations of this inner dedication. You've seen the movies, read the books. Reality was something else entirely. Forget the serene, almost indolent figures often depicted, draped in linen, contemplating the cosmos. The reality of an Egyptian priest serving in a prominent temple like Karnak or the Temple of Ptah in Memphis during the New Kingdom, say, around the reign of Rameses II, circa 1279-2013 BCE, was one of relentless intellectual pursuit and profound responsibility. Passive contemplation, It was a demanding vocation requiring a mind honed sharper than any obsidian blade. Already glimpsed the sheer scale of their duties, the intricate organizational web that bound their lives. Early starts. Now we delve into the very foundation of that power and influence, the staggering intellectual requirements. Seasons change, the focus of your training shifts from the foundational understanding of temple administration to the core texts that formed the bedrock of their worldview. A young acolyte, perhaps no older than 10, already deeply immersed in the hieroglyphic script. Casual acquaintance, it was a lifelong mastery. Countless hours tracing the elegant curves and precise lines of sacred texts, not just to read them, but to understand their phonetic values, their ideographic meanings, and the subtle nuances of their arrangement. Was the absolute gateway, but it was merely the first step. The sheer volume of religious literature was immense, talking about hymns to the gods, funerary texts like the Book of the Dead, temple rituals, creation myths, and theological treatises, complex tapestry of symbolism and doctrine requiring not just memorization, but deep interpretation. You wouldn't just read the Hymn to the Sun by Akhenaten, you'd dissect its theological implications, its artistic expression, historical context, all while understanding its liturgical use. I discovered in archives translation of papyri like the Chester Beatty papyri, just how intricate these texts were, multiple layers of meaning, often allegorical, that only a trained mind could unravel. Your mind would be a library, constantly cataloging, cross-referencing and synthesizing this vast body of knowledge. As the seasons change, your studies expand beyond the divine pronouncements to encompass the earthly sciences, inextricably linked to the divine order. Detached scientific curiosity, it was the divine clockwork of the cosmos. Chart the movements of stars and planets, to predict celestial events like the heliacal rising of Sirius, which heralded the annual inundation of the Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt. This knowledge was crucial for agriculture, for timing festivals, understanding the divine will. Imagine standing on a temple rooftop at night, the air cool and carrying the scent of lotus blossoms, a shimmering river across the inky sky. Your mentor, a seasoned priest named Senemat, points to a particular constellation. Young one, he'd murmur, his voice a low rumble, Orion. His rising signals the season of planting. Speak through the heavens, and it is our duty to listen and interpret. Your understanding of the heavens would be practical, rhythm of life and the maintenance of cosmic balance. Mine eye. As the seasons change, Tukit extends to the realm of medicine. This was not the superstition of common folk. It was a sophisticated, empirical understanding of the human body. You'd study anatomical texts, learn about herbal remedies, understand the principles of diagnosis and treatment. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, dating back to around 1600 BCE, remarkably rational approach to medicine, describing surgical cases with precision and offering prognosis. Identify ailments, understand the role of humours, though not in the Greek sensi, and prepare poultices and salves. A scene in the temple's infirmary, the air thick with the scent of medicinal herbs like coriander and poppy. A farmer has a deep gash on his leg from a farming accident. You, now a junior priest with several years of training, clean the wound with a solution of honey, a natural antiseptic, and apply a compress made from crushed willow bark, relieving properties. Senemat observes, his weathered face etched with concentration. Remember, a vessel of the divine. To heal it is to honor the gods, but also remember some ailments are beyond our earthly skill. know when to offer prayer and comfort, and when to employ the remedies the earth provides. This dual approach, blending empirical knowledge with spiritual faith, was characteristic of Egyptian medicine. This rigorous intellectual training, literacy, theology, astronomy, and medicine, was not for the faint of heart. It demanded immense mental fortitude. Days in silent study, your evenings in communal recitation and debate, and your nights perhaps in astronomical observation. Sheer volume of information to absorb and retain would be overwhelming by modern standards, especially without the aid of printed books. Piece of knowledge was painstakingly copied by hand, often on papyrus, a costly and fragile medium. The delicate touch required to unroll a fragile scroll, the faint scent of aged papyrus filling your nostrils, the ink a deep black against the pale surface. Your hands, though perhaps calloused from other temple duties, steady and precise as you copied a sacred hymn or a medical treatise. This dedication to preserving and transmitting knowledge was the priest's primary function. To the intellectual elite of society, they were the custodians of wisdom, the interpreters of the divine, healers of the body and soul. This wasn't a life of idleness, it was a life of constant, demanding intellectual engagement, a stark contrast to the simplistic image often portrayed. Your mind, though weary from the day's studies, quiet satisfaction in the knowledge you've acquired. The stars are beginning to twinkle, a familiar pattern emerging in the darkening sky. Tomorrow you will begin your studies of the temple's architectural blueprints, the sacred geometry that underpins the very structure of the divine realm. Never quite capture the texture of daily life in this remarkable era, do they? They speak of pharaohs and pyramids, dynasties, but they rarely convey the sheer, bone-deep weariness, the gnawing anxiety, or the profound, suffocating weight of duty that defined the existence of a priest serving in the heart of a major temple complex. The organizational charts, the early mornings, the intellectual rigor. Now prepare to step into the sanctum, scorching sun on your skin as you perform rites that have been whispered and meticulously practiced for millennia. The gods' demands not as abstract concepts, but as tangible, ever-present pressures. You begin to understand the sheer, unyielding precision required. It's not just about knowing the hymns, it's about the exact angle of the offering bowl, precise quantity of coal applied to the statue's eyes, the specific, unvarying intonation of a prayer that must resonate with divine favor. This morning, the air in the inner sanctuary of Karnak, Rana, is thick with the scent of lotus blossoms, myrrh incense, and the subtle, spilled libations from yesterday's rituals. The dawn light, still a pale, hesitant whisper beyond the massive pylons, through alabaster windows illuminating dust motes dancing in the still air. Your linen kilt, bleached to an almost luminous white against your skin, a stark contrast to the rising heat. Your hands, usually steady, slightly as you approach a gilded shrine. Before you stands the colossal statue of Amun-Ra, carved from black granite, crown gleaming even in the dim light. You are tasked with the daily awakening ritual. This isn't a casual greeting, creation of the primordial act of creation itself. You hold a small, intricately carved wooden falcon representing Horus, intermediary, and you must move it in a specific, prescribed pattern around the statue's head. Ancient words of awakening. Each syllable is weighted with cosmic significance. A mispronunciation, a faltering gesture, disfavor of the uncreated one, a thought that sends a cold shiver down your spine. Amun-Ra, Lord of the Horizon! Lord of the two lands. The sky is clear, the earth rejoices. Your voice, though trained, feels Small, the immense silence of the temple. You can feel the eyes of the senior priests, the overseer of the temple treasury, watching from the shadows of a nearby column. His gaze is like a physical weight, reminder of the lineage you represent and the expectations that come with it. You begin the anointing. The finest oils, desert blooms, are poured into a golden chalice. You dip a brush made from the finest papyrus reeds, selecting each one for its perfect stiffness. The first application is to the statue's forehead, tracing the divine cobra. Then the chest, the arms, the legs. Each stroke must be smooth, unbroken, conveying reverence and adoration. You are not merely cleaning, nourishing the divine essence, reaffirming its presence and power. The oil leaves a shimmering sheen, reflecting the nascent sunlight. Table. Today, the offerings are a carefully curated selection, a loaf of freshly baked emmer wheat bread, perfect crescent, a bowl of figs, their skins still dewy, a small, intricately woven basket of dates, finest Nile wine, its color a deep, rich ruby. Each item has been inspected, de-verified by a team of temple servants. You must arrange them in a specific order, facing the statue. Bread is closest, followed by the fruit, then the wine. The very placement is a language, a silent conversation with the divine. The figs are particularly ripe this season, are they not initiate? Thutmose's voice, surprisingly soft. Through your concentration, you turn, bowing your head. Indeed, overseer, the inundation was generous, harvest has been blessed. He steps closer, his aged eyes, roomy but sharp, examining the offerings. Appreciate bounty, but they demand grand gratitude. Remember that. The simplest offering, presented with a pure heart and perfect form, a mountain of ill-prepared gifts. He gestures to a small alabaster jar, the perfume for Amun's beard. Did you recall the specific blend of sandalwood and myrrh that the text dictates for the feast of your stomach tightens? The saffron. You had been so focused on the precision of the oil application, you'd almost overlooked the subtle variation in the perfume blend. Overseer, I remembered. You offer a small, reassuring smile, hoping it conveys more confidence than you feel. He nods, a flicker of approval in his eyes. A good precision, initiate, is the language the gods understand. They do not tolerate sloppiness, carelessness. You are not merely serving Amun, you are participating in the cosmic order. The stability of Egypt, rhythm of the sun and the Nile, depends on our diligence. You can feel the immense responsibility settling on your shoulders. It's not just about appeasing the gods, it's about maintaining the cosmic balance. A slight deviation in a ritual, a forgotten offering, are seen consequences. You think of the papyrus scrolls detailing the genealogies of the gods, astronomical charts that dictated the timing of festivals, the complex magical incantations designed to ward off chaos. All of it hinges on the meticulous performance of these daily duties by individuals like yourself. You begin the water libation from a silver ewer into a shallow basin before the statue. The sound of the water splashing is a gentle counterpoint to the rustle of your linen garments. You rinse your hands, cool and cleansing. Next, the burning of incense. You carefully place a small lump of frankincense onto a heated charcoal brazier, curling upwards in fragrant tendrils, carrying your prayers and offerings to the celestial realm. The scent fills the air, sacred perfume that permeates every corner of the inner sanctuary you've discovered in the archives. During your studies under the tutelage of the Venerable Seneb, a fascinating detail about these daily rituals. It's believed that the gods, much like mortals, required sustenance and comfort. The offerings were not just symbolic, They were thought to be consumed by the divine essence, plenishing their power and ensuring their continued benevolent watch over Egypt. This concept, so alien to modern sensibilities, the bedrock of their faith. It's a stark contrast to our own society, where we often consume resources without a second thought for their source or our impact. The sun is now higher, its rays stronger. The sanctuary is becoming oppressive. You can feel sweat gathering on your brow, tracing a path through the fine dust on your skin. The weight of the golden pectoral you wear, a symbol of your office, heavier than usual. It depicts a winged scarab, a symbol of rebirth and the sun's journey, a constant reminder of the divine power you are meant to serve and embody. You move to the next stage, the sacred vessels. Each bowl, each chalice, spoon must be washed with consecrated water and then dried with a specially prepared linen cloth. Water used for washing is then collected and poured into a designated receptacle, never to be wasted. Every drop, every movement. The evening ritual will require the preparation of the sacred beer. Initiate. Thutmose reminds you, a low murmur as he approaches his own white robes immaculate. The barley is properly fermented and the honey is of the finest quality. Remember the incident with the last batch. The seer of the granary was most displeased. You nod, a familiar pang of anxiety resurfacing. The fermented beer, a staple of the Egyptian diet and a crucial offering, had indeed been a minor disaster. In the fermentation process had resulted in a batch that was too sour, almost vinegary, and the gods, it was whispered, displeasure through a sudden sandstorm that battered the temple for days. The shame had been immense. Oversee the brewing myself, overseer, and I will personally taste the fermentation at each stage. Thutmose gives a rare, acceptable smile. Good. Your diligence is noted. Now proceed. The midday adoration awaits. Amun's gaze is ever watchful. You can understand now, with a clarity that chills you, why so few could endure this life. The physical labor, though that was considerable, it was the relentless, soul-crushing pressure to perform perfectly every single time in the eyes of an unseen, all-powerful entity, the constant fear of divine retribution, maintaining cosmic order, the sheer, unyielding repetition of sacred duties. It was a burden that would break most minds. Spirits, as you prepare for the midday adoration, the rhythm of the temple continues, a symphony of hushed chants, the clinking of bronze, the scent of incense, and the ever-present, watchful gaze of the divine. You are a cog in a colossal, sacred machine. The slightest malfunction could bring the entire edifice crashing down. The history books will tell you of the grandeur, the power. They will not tell you of the sweat, the fear, and the absolute, terrifying precision that made it all possible. Bridge to the next sub-part begins with the subtle shift in the quality of light. As the sun reaches its zenith, casting sharp, giving shadows, you prepare for the midday rituals, sustenance, and the recitation of the daily litanies that reinforce the sacred covenant between the gods and the land of Kemet. Feel the anticipation of the afternoon's tasks, the meticulous preparation of amulets for the pharaoh requires an even greater level of arcane knowledge and unwavering focus. As you settle into night, let me transport you to a world both alien and achingly familiar, a world where the sacred permeated every breath, every morsel, every interaction. We've explored the early starts, the rigorous studies, and the intricate rituals. Now, let's delve into the unseen, the deeply personal, the very fabric of a priest's daily existence as dictated by the gods themselves. This isn't about grand pronouncements from temple steps, but the quiet, constant discipline that shaped a priest's very being. This is about food purity and the taboos that defined their lives. Slowly but surely, the meticulous nature of priestly existence unfolds, a world governed by an astonishing level of personal regulation. Imagine waking not to the blare of an alarm, of a servant, the first rays of Ra painting the eastern sky. Your first thought, before even a sip of water, of the day's purity requirements. For an Egyptian priest, food was not merely sustenance. It was a conduit, potential source of impurity, and thus a constant concern. The dietary laws were incredibly stringent. Was considered pure. This meant no pork, no fish from certain waters that had been left out overnight. The meat you consumed had to be ritually slaughtered and inspected, carefully drained. Think of it, every meal was an act of faith, a conscious choice to adhere to divine mandates. Of freshly baked bread, perhaps made from emmer wheat, would fill your chambers. Simple staple could be problematic if not prepared with the utmost care. You might be offered a bowl of lentils, a staple of the common diet, or perhaps some dates, their sweetness a welcome burst against the palate. But the preparation was key. Were the utensils clean? Was the water drawn from a pure source? These questions would be ever present. Discovered in the archives of the Serapeum, a fascinating papyrus fragment detailing the specific types of bread deemed acceptable for temple use. Grain grains that had not been touched by birds or rodents, ground with stones that had been purified by fire. Eating became a meditative practice, a conscious effort to keep your body a vessel worthy of the gods. The taste of the food, while important, was secondary to its provenance and preparation. You might find yourself chewing slowly, savoring the simple, acutely aware that each bite was a step in maintaining your sacred status. Slowly but surely, personal hygiene became paramount. Beyond the ritualistic washing of hands and feet before entering sacred spaces, a practice you'd be intimately familiar with by now, priests were expected to maintain an almost sterile cleanliness. This wasn't just about smelling pleasant, it was about eradicating any trace of the profane. Your body hair was considered a repository of impurity. Therefore, you would have your entire body shaved from head to toe basis. This included your eyebrows and even fingernails and toenails. The feel of smooth, clean skin, free from the roughness of hair, would be your constant companion. Imagine the sensory experience, the cool linen garments against your newly shaven skin, the faint scent of natron or fragrant oils used to cleanse and anoint. Your clothing would be washed daily, often in the Nile itself, a source of both life and potentially contamination. You would wear simple, in kilts and tunics, unadorned and impeccably clean. The texture of the linen, woven from the finest flax, would be a constant reminder of your commitment. The air in your quarters would likely be perfumed with incense, not just for worship, atmosphere of purity. I recall reading a vivid account from the reign of Amenhotep IV. The meticulous cleansing rituals performed by priests before dawn. They would bathe in specially designated pools, soaps made from animal fat and alkali. The water itself was often heated and purified. It was a process that could take hours. By the time they approached the inner sanctums, every pore of their being radiated sanctity. Slowly but surely, social taboos would further restrict your interactions. While you were a priest, your contact with the outside world, particularly with those deemed impure, was carefully controlled. You would avoid touching the dead, part of a specific funerary rite. You would also likely avoid contact with pregnant women or those menstruating, as these were considered states of flux and potential impurity. Even the way you walked in public would be considered to stride with arrogance. but to move with a measured, dignified pace, always mindful of the sacred aura they carried. Consider a hypothetical interaction. You walking through the temple complex, the midday sun warming the stone underfoot. Counter a scribe, a respected member of society, but not a priest. You would greet him, perhaps with a slight bow, but a full embrace or prolonged physical contact would be avoided. The conversation would be brief, focused on matters of temple administration or religious texts. May Amun bless your day, Neferhotep. You might say, your voice calm and measured. Neferhotep, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, would reply, and yours, honored priest, were well received this morning. Your internal monologue might be a quiet assessment. Has he been near any unclean things? Touch carry any potential for defilement? These weren't judgments of character, but a constant, necessary for your role. Then, a different scenario. You see a child, perhaps the son of a temple official, courts. The child might approach you, eager to offer a small, carved amulet. You would accept it, with a cloth held between your hand and the amulet, or a swift, ritualistic cleansing of your hand immediately afterward. Innocence was a blessing, but their untamed physicality, their unrefined existence, presented a subtle challenge to your meticulously maintained purity. A fine gift, young one, you might say, but firm. May the gods watch over you. These weren't acts of coldness, but a deep standing of the boundaries required to serve the divine. It was a life of constant self-awareness, dance between the human and the divine. The weight of this responsibility, the constant vigilance, would be a heavily rewarding burden. It's a discipline that, frankly, most of us today would find nearly impossible to maintain, learning to be free of such constraints, and yet, in a strange way, this absolute adherence to a higher purpose, dedication to something beyond the self, holds a certain undeniable appeal. But for now, as the sun dips below the horizon, sky in hues of orange and purple, your thoughts turn to the evening prayers and the next cycle of purity begins. Tomorrow, explore the profound intellectual and spiritual world that these rigorous disciplines were designed to serve. Darkness settles around you now. Imagine darkness that meant something completely different. Absence of light that signals the end of a day, but a profound, encompassing presence, cloak woven from the stillness of the temple precincts. You are not merely an observer, you are there. Priest of Amun, Roy in the sprawling Karnak complex, perhaps during the reign of the mighty Rameses T, around 1279 BCE. The air, scent of incense, frankincense and myrrh, a constant, sweet perfume, hangs heavy and still. Sandals whisper softly on the cool, polished stone floors of the administrative wing. From the echoing grandeur of the hyperstyle hall, the faint glow of oil lamps casts long dancing shadows, familiar corridors into an ethereal maze. You can almost taste the dust motes suspended in the lamplight, the slight chill that permeates these inner sanctums even on the hottest desert nights. This is not a place of ethereal chanting alone. Engine room of faith, the nerve center of a vast, intricate organization of time, reveals the sheer weight of responsibility resting on your shoulders, a burden far heavier than the linen robes you wear. A priest extends far beyond reciting hymns or performing daily ablutions. You are an administrator, steward of immense wealth, and a manager of a complex human ecosystem. Your hands, accustomed to the delicate handling of sacred artifacts, also adept at deciphering ledgers, calculating grain yields, and overseeing the allocation of resources. Consider the temple estates, mere decorative gardens. They were vast agricultural enterprises, the lifeblood of the temple's sustenance and wealth. You are responsible for ensuring the efficient cultivation of fields, management of irrigation channels drawn from the life-giving Nile, and the timely harvesting of barley, wheat, and flax. Standing with the overseer, a man named Night, his skin bronzed by the relentless sun, rough from years of shouting instructions. "The inundation was good this year, father," he reports, crinkling at the corners. "The barley is ripening well, but the northern fields, the canal, there is silting up faster than usual. More laborers to clear it before the next planting season." Your mind immediately races through the available manpower, boosting work schedules. Can you reallocate workers from the southern estates without jeopardizing their yield? Do you need to petition the high priest for additional hands, which means navigating bureaucratic channels, clear justifications for the expenditure of resources? The passage of time reveals the intricate dance of temple finances. See the collection of tithes, offerings from the faithful, and the income generated by the temple's vast landholdings and workshops. Abstract numbers on a scroll, they represent tangible goods, sacks of grain, bolts of fine linen, amphorae of wine, craft items. You examine inventory lists, cross-referencing them with incoming shipments, shows a delivery of cedar wood from Byblos, vital for temple construction and furniture. You must verify its quality, its quantity, properly stored. A misplaced shipment, a damaged consignment, can have ripple effects, projects, or leaving priests without necessary supplies. You remember a tense meeting with the chief scribe, Kepri, stained fingers and a perpetually furrowed brow. "Father," he'd said, his voice a low murmur, "counts for the festival of Opet are proving problematic. Votive offerings seems to have exceeded the allocated budget by a significant margin. Understand where the discrepancy lies. This requires meticulous examination of receipts, cross-referencing expenditures with the temple's treasury, identifying any unauthorized withdrawals or miscalculations. Balancing act, ensuring the temple's coffers remain full enough to support its many functions, the daily rituals, sacred precincts, the provision of food and clothing for the hundreds of priests and temple staff, generous support of the royal court. The passage of time reveals the human element. The management of personnel was a self-contained city housing priests of various ranks, scribes, artisans, laborers, and even their families, responsible for ensuring everyone is housed, fed, and assigned their duties, mediating a dispute between two junior priests over sleeping quarters, performance of a craftsman responsible for repairing a sacred statue. Imagine the hum of activity in the priest's barracks, stark contrast to the quiet contemplation of the sanctuary. You might overhear snippets of conversation, bowls as a meal is served, the rustle of papyrus as a scribe meticulously records daily events. You might have a brief conversation with a temple physician, Senesret, his hands steady and his knowledge of herbs and poultices extensive. Senesret might say, his voice calm and reassuring, the priest Ibec is recovering well from his fever. Few more days of rest and a diet of light broth and dates. I have instructed his attendant to ensure he receives them. This requires you to ensure the physician's orders are carried out, receives the proper care, and that his absence from his duties is accounted for. Also involved in the training of new acolytes, ensuring they understand not only the theological intricacies, but also the practical demands of their service. Yourself explaining the proper way to polish a bronze ritual vessel to a young man whose hands still tremble with nerves, is wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. This administrative burden was a constant, unglamorous reality of the foundation upon which the spiritual edifice was built. Without efficient management of estates, finances, and personnel would falter, the offerings would cease, and the divine favor would surely wane. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? Mystique of the Egyptian priest was so deeply intertwined with the mundane realities of bookkeeping and resource allocation. Find yourself late at night poring over a papyrus scroll detailing the distribution of rations, casting a warm, personal glow on your face, the scent of lamp oil mingling with the ever-present incense. Stark reminder that even in the service of the divine, the practical demands of earthly existence could not be ignored. Passage of time reveals the subtle shifts in the daily rhythm of the temple, the constant need for adaptation and foresight. As the stars begin their slow, majestic arc across the inky canvas of the sky, you feel the weight of the day, not just from spiritual duties, sheer, relentless practicality of keeping this vast institution running. Of the administrative wing is a testament to the unseen labor that sustained the glory of Amun-Ra, often went unrecorded in the grand pronouncements of pharaohs, but was no less vital. As you prepare to rest, tomorrow will bring new challenges, new ledgers to balance, new needs to address. During tapestry of temple life, and as the last oil lamp is extinguished, hear the faint whisper of the next day's administrative tasks already beginning to stir in the pre-dawn quiet. Primary sources reveal details that will change how you see this entire period. Gleaming gold and the serene statues for a moment. Picture instead the raw, visceral reality of a life lived under the constant, palpable gaze of the divine, the sheer weight of responsibility, the razor's edge between divine favor and utter ruin. This was the daily bread of an Egyptian priest, burden that would crush most modern souls. You've seen the movies, read the romanticized accounts of priests as serene conduits of wisdom, incense-laden temples, but beneath that gilded veneer lay a profound psychological struggle, anxiety that permeated every waking moment. This wasn't a job, it was a surrender, lived on the precipice of cosmic judgment. The weeks pass, and you discover the crushing weight of mediation. Imagine holding the delicate balance of the cosmos in your hands, not through grand pronouncements, the meticulous execution of ritual. Your mornings begin not with a gentle awakening, with the chilling realization that the sun Ra himself has risen, and your performance yesterday, your offerings, the slightest deviation, a misplaced hieroglyph, inattention during the daily purification rites for the divine statue in the inner sanctuary of the temple of Amun at Karnak, interpreted as a personal slight against the gods. This wasn't just about appeasing a distant deity, Ephemerotos, the cosmic order, and your role as priest was paramount. A famine, a plague, these weren't just natural occurrences, they were potential indicators of divine displeasure, and you, the intermediary, the brunt of the people's fear and your own self-recrimination. You recall the hushed whispers you overheard from your fellow priests, their faces etched with a wariness that went beyond physical fatigue. One evening, as the oil lamps cast flickering shadows across the cool stone walls of the priest's quarters, you found yourself in conversation with Amenhotep, a seasoned priest of middle years whose hands, though steady, perpetual apprehension. The inundation was poor this year, Neb Sen, Amenhotep murmured, the embers in the brazier. The Nile's bounty is a direct reflection of Happy's favor, and Happy, in turn, the will of the gods above. Do you think we have somehow angered Amun-Ra? Your own stomach tightened. overseen the offerings to Happy just days before, a complex sequence involving grain, beer, and lotus flowers, carefully weighed and presented. You had chanted the hymns with all the devotion you could muster, resonating in the vast, echoing halls. But doubt, a insidious serpent, had coiled itself around your thoughts even then. Rituals as prescribed, Amenhotep. You replied, striving for a confidence you didn't entirely feel, were pure. The words were spoken with reverence, and Amenhotep let out a sigh that seemed to carry the dust of centuries. Yes, but did our hearts truly align? Did our thoughts stray, even for a fleeting moment? When we stood before the divine essence, the gods see not just our actions, but the intentions behind them. The people, they look to us, Nepsen. They see our failures as their own damnation. The fear was palpable, entity that clung to the air like the scent of stale incense. You understood then that the greatest challenge wasn't mastering the intricate liturgical texts or performing the complex ceremonies flawlessly. The internal battle against doubt, the constant self-scrutiny, fear of having failed in the eyes of beings whose power was absolute and whose displeasure could manifest in devastating ways. Particular incident during the reign of Akhenaten, a period of immense religious upheaval. Bull was not directly affected by his monotheistic reforms. The underlying societal anxiety, questioning of established divine relationships, had filtered down. Atmosphere of uncertainty even in the more traditional centers of worship. Historical precedent served as a stark reminder of how quickly the divine favor could shift and how precarious your position truly was. Pass and you discover the profound isolation that accompanied this burden. While you were surrounded by fellow priests, responsibility for appeasing the gods rested squarely on your shoulders. You couldn't truly share the depth of your anxieties, of near paralyzing fear that seized you before performing a particularly critical ritual. Standing before the sacred barca containing the statue of the god, the air thick with the scent of myrrh and cedar wood, broken only by the rhythmic beating of your own heart. Your hands, clad in linen wrappings, tremble as you reach for the golden pectoral. You can feel the cool, polished surface of the stone beneath your fingertips. The weight of millennia of tradition, the expectations of the entire populace, of an offended deity, it all converges in this single, terrifying instant. Call a conversation with a younger acolyte, a bright-eyed boy named Thutmose, who was still awestruck by the temple's grandeur. He had approached you a particularly elaborate procession, his face alight with innocent wonder. Master Nebsen, he had exclaimed, sunlight caught the god's headdress today. It was as if the heavens themselves were smiling upon us. You managed a weak smile to enjoy a stark contrast to your own internal turmoil. Indeed, Thutmose, indeed. But as he scampered off, was already racing. Had the sunlight been too bright? Had it been a sign of divine power or a warning? His innocent observation a genuine reflection of divine favor, or merely a trick of the light, a cosmic jest at your expense? This constant second-guessing, this inability to find true peace or certainty was the psychological price of your sacred profession. It was a mental battlefield where faith and fear waged an eternal war, and you were the solitary soldier. Pass, and you discover the sheer terror of divine displeasure. It wasn't an abstract concept. It was a visceral, lived experience, a story passed down through generations of priests, of those who had faltered. The tale of a scribe who, in a moment of hubris, had dared to question the efficacy of a specific offering, and who was subsequently found dead in his chambers, inexplicably withered as if life itself had been leached from him by an unseen force, a ritualistic impurity that had led to a localized drought, crops withering and the people suffering, all because a priest, exhausted from sleepless nights of prayer, had accidentally touched an unclean object before entering the sacred precinct. You find yourself in the temple library, a vast chamber filled with papyrus scrolls, the air dry and filled with the faint of aged knowledge. You are poring over ancient texts, seeking reassurance, seeking patterns that might offer a clue to the gods' ever-shifting moods. You come across a fragment detailing the consequences of failing to properly consecrate a sacred artifact. The description is chilling. Fire shall consume that which is defiled, and the very air shall turn to ash around the offender. You shiver, the cool stone of the library, but from the sheer, unadulterated terror these words evoke. Later that day, seeing the preparation of the sacred oils, a small vial slips from your grasp, shattering on the stone floor. Precious contents, a blend of fragrant blossoms and precious resins, spread like a dark stain. For a moment, catches in your throat. The acolyte who had been assisting you gaps, his eyes wide with fear. You feel a cold dread wash over you, the imagined wrath of the gods, a tangible presence in the room. You quickly gather the shards, hands shaking, and order the area to be meticulously cleansed, performing a personal purification ritual with more fervor than usual. Intellectually, that it was an accident, but the ingrained fear, the constant awareness of the potential consequences, possible to dismiss the incident as mere clumsiness. It's a stark reminder of how easily one could fall from grace, overwhelming pressure to maintain an unblemished record in the eyes of the divine. This constant state of heightened alert, perpetual fear of divine displeasure, wasn't just a psychological burden, it was physically and mentally exhausting. Even in moments of supposed peace, your mind was never truly at rest. You were a sentinel, forever on watch, anticipating the next perceived transgression, the next subtle shift in divine favor. The serenity of the temples, the grandeur of the rituals, the reverence of the people, all of it was underscored by this profound, ever-present anxiety. Lived on the edge, a constant balancing act, where the slightest misstep could have catastrophic consequences. As the stars begin to prick the darkening sky, you can almost feel the weight of it all pressing down on you. The meticulousness required, the sheer terror of divine anger, it's a burden that few could sustain. And tomorrow, the cycle will begin anew. The prayers, the ceaseless effort to remain in the good graces of the gods. The weeks pass, and you discover the immense, unbearable pressure of being the public face of the divine. The people didn't just see you as a priest, as a direct link to the gods. Your pronouncements, your interpretations of omens, your very demeanor were scrutinized, analyzed, believed to be imbued with divine authority. This created a profound disconnect between your internal reality and your public persona, unwavering confidence of divine connection, even when your heart was pounding with fear and self-doubt. A specific instance during the reign of Amenhotep II, a period of immense prosperity and artistic flourishing for Egypt. Anamun at Luxor was a hub of activity, and you, as a priest there, were often called upon to address the assembled populace. Sweltering afternoon, a crowd had gathered, seeking reassurance after a series of unsettling omens, unusual cloud formations, settling behavior of temple animals. You stood on the elevated platform, the sun beating down on your linen robes. Of hundreds of people turned towards you, their eyes filled with a mixture of hope and dread. You began the recitation, yourself, amplified by the vastness of the temple courtyard. You spoke of the enduring power of Amun-Ra, cyclical nature of divine favor, of the importance of continued devotion and offerings. But as you spoke, a profound sense of fraudulence. You were reciting words, performing a role, the gnawing uncertainty that gnawed at your own soul. You were acutely aware of your own fallibility, your own human frailties, gulf between the divine beings you served and your own mortal existence. Master Nepsen, a merchant, called out from the crowd, his voice carrying clearly, "Lod was lower this year than in my father's memory. Is this a sign of Amun's anger?" Your heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment of truth. You had to provide an answer that would quell their fears, not amplify them. You took a deep breath, serene expression onto your face. You remembered a similar concern raised by a priest during a previous reign, crafted response that had appeased the people. "My son," you called back, your voice steady, "work in ways beyond our comprehension. The rivers ebb and flow are but one facet of their grand design. Continue to honor them, to perform our duties with diligence and faith, and trust that their wisdom guides all things." Words of the hymns. Amun is the hidden one. His plans are secret. His ways are not our ways. Ooh, a ripple of murmurs went through the crowd, a collective sigh of relief. Navigated the treacherous waters, at least for now, but the encounter left you shaken. The sheer performance required, constant need to project an image of divine certainty, was exhausting. Even your moments of supposed spiritual connection were tinged with the anxiety of maintaining the facade. You were a shepherd of people, but of their belief, and the weight of that responsibility was crushing. You realized that the history books on grand pronouncements and monumental constructions often overlooked this deeply human element of priestly life. The weeks pass, and you discover the profound loneliness of this sacred duty. While surrounded by fellow priests, the ultimate burden of divine favor, the fear of displeasure, was a solitary struggle. Of your role demanded a certain detachment, a sublimation of personal anxieties for the sake of maintaining order and faith. A conda bridge, and bridges by their very nature stand alone. As the evening deepens, in the priest's refectory, the air thick with the aroma of baked bread and fermented beer. Other priests are engaged in quiet conversation, their faces illuminated by the flickering oil lamps. Polite greeting to Horemheb, a fellow priest of the cult of Sekhmet, his usual robust demeanor somewhat subdued. "A difficult day?" inquired his voice, a low rumble. You nod, a faint smile playing on your lips. "As always, Horemheb. To Sekhmet require particular vigilance." You chose your words carefully, hinting at the intensity of your duties without revealing the depth of your personal anxieties. Horemheb sighed over his closely shaven head. Indeed, the lioness demands a certain respect, a certain unwavering focus. Gaze, does one not? A constant reminder of her power and our fragility. You meet his gaze. The shared burden in his eyes. Her gaze is indeed a heavy one. You realize that this unspoken understanding, shared experience of perpetual apprehension, is the closest you come to true connection in this profession. But even this shared understanding is veiled, a subtle acknowledgement of a shared fear that cannot be fully articulated. The weight of divine favor, you understand, is a solitary burden, a secret carried in the heart amongst those who walk the same sacred path. And as you prepare for another night of vigil, the dawn will bring with it the same relentless pressure, the same gnawing fear. But for now is only the quiet hum of the temple, the distant call of a night bird, and the ever-present awareness of the divine gaze. You have chosen a life of service, a life of fear, a life that would undoubtedly break the spirit of any modern soul. Sleep begins to claim you. You wonder what the next day will bring, and if you will be found worthy. The further back we go, the more we realize how much courage ordinary life required. As you settle in tonight, let me transport you to a world where the divine touched the everyday, and the temple priest was not merely an administrator or a scholar. Nexus of community life. Imagine yourself not as a detached observer, but as the priest Horemheb, standing on the cool of the Karnak temple precinct, the late afternoon sun casting long, dancing shadows from towering obelisks. The air, scent of lotus blossoms and burning incense, hums with the murmur of 1,000 lives. You've just concluded the daily rituals, the scent of myrrh still clinging to your linen robes, divine petitions of familiar pressure on your soul, but your duties are far from over. The temple doors, slabs of cedar wood, are opening to receive the people, and with them come their hopes, their fears, and their endless human needs. Changes as the day's formal worship gives way to the more intimate, yet no less profound, interactions with the populace. You step out from the inner sanctum. Linen robes a stark contrast to the dust and sweat of the common folk who gather at the temple's outer courts. Before you, small crowd has already formed a tapestry of faces etched with the realities of life under the new kingdom, perhaps around 1350 BCE, of Akhenaten, though your specific duties would remain largely consistent across many dynasties. Low drone of conversation, the occasional cry of a child, the bleating of a goat tethered nearby. The late afternoon sun still radiates from the sandstone walls. Feel its residual heat on your bare arms and the soles of your simple leather sandals. Your first encounter is with a farmer, deeply lined like the fertile banks of the Nile after the inundation. He carries a small woven basket, and his knuckles are raw, cake-caked with dark earth. He bows low, his voice a rough whisper. Great Horaheb, son of Ra, I come seeking your blessing. They are dry, the water levels are low, and the seedlings wither, will starve if the rains do not come soon. He offers you the basket. Inside, nestled on a bed of fresh greens, figs, their skin a deep purple, glistening with dew. The aroma is sweet and earthy. You accept the offering, the smooth figs a pleasant sensation against your palm. This is not just a plea for divine intervention, tangible expression of trust, a sharing of the meager bounty he possesses. You place your hand on his shoulder, texture of his tunic a reminder of his toil. May the blessings of Osiris be upon your fields. You intune, calm and measured, and pray to Happy for abundance and do not lose faith. The gods listen. You murmur a short rain, a silent plea for the life, giving waters to flow. The farmer nods, a flicker of hope in his wary eyes. Next, a woman approaches, her face veiled, her body trembling. She clutches a small, carved wooden amulet in her hand. Her voice is a thin thread of sound, barely audible above the general hum. Priest, son, he is feverish, he coughs without ceasing. The physicians can do nothing. They say it is the breath of Sekhmet. Please, a charm, a protection against the sickness. You look at her, the worry etched so deeply into her features. Limitations of your power, the vast gulf between human suffering and divine will. Yet you are the intermediary. At your waist and retrieve a small, smooth lapis lazuli bead, cool and heavy in your fingers. You instruct gently. Wear it around your son's neck. Recite the words of protection I will give you. Prayer to Isis, the Great Mother, for her healing touch. You whisper a short incantation, ancient words meant to ward off illness, the syllables feeling both powerful and fragile on your tongue, the weight of her unspoken fear, the desperate hope she places in your hands. It is a heavy burden, mediation between the tangible world and the unseen forces that govern it. Changes as a dispute erupts nearby, a sharp, angry exchange that cuts through the general murmur. Two men, with anger, are arguing over a debt. One clutches a papyrus scroll, its edges frayed. The other gestures wildly, rising in pitch. You sigh inwardly. These are the moments that truly test your patience, your wisdom, ability to remain impartial. You walk towards them, your presence immediately commanding a degree of respect. Enough, you say, carrying an authority born, not of physical strength, but of spiritual standing. Cause of this discord. The men fall silent, their eyes fixed on you. The one with the scroll steps forward. Horemheb, migraine, as this contract clearly states, he declares, thrusting the papyrus towards you. He refuses to pay, claiming the harvest was poor. The other man retorts, the harvest was poor, and he knows it. Seeks to ruin May. You take the scroll, its surface cool and slightly rough. You can feel the weight of the ink, reeds used to bind it. You scan the hieroglyphs, your mind sifting through the legalistic language. Discovered in the archives of the Temple of Ptah in Memphis that such contracts were meticulously kept, sealed with the impressed mark of the lender. You look from one man to the other, your gaze steady. Each of you begin, must speak your truth without interruption. Then I will offer judgment. You listen intently as each man presents his case. The sun beginning to dip lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet. You consider the evidence, the witnesses, as if each man in the community. This isn't just about fairness. It's about maintaining social harmony. Web of community relationships remains intact. You recall a similar case Horemheb had to mediate a few years ago. Dispute over irrigation water threatened to erupt into violence. Then that understanding the nuances of local custom and the specific agricultural cycles was as crucial as understanding the law. After careful consideration, it's clear you state addressing the debtor. You made an agreement. However, you turn to the lender. I have also heard that your own harvest was bountiful this year. It is understandable that you would expect to be repaid in full, but in the spirit of generosity that art demands, and recognizing the hardship the land has presented, I decree that you accept 3/4 of the agreed upon grain now, and the remaining quarter after the next harvest. This will allow him to meet his obligations without being utterly destitute, still receive what is owed. You see the flicker of dissatisfaction in both men's eyes, but also a grudging acceptance. Rarely about absolute victory, it is about compromise, about finding a path that allows life to continue. Some lingering resentment. You feel a wariness settle in your bones, the emotional toll of these interactions. You've dispensed advice, offered blessings, and now mediated disputes. Each act requires a piece of your energy, a portion of your spirit. Rays of the sun fade, casting the temple courtyards into deepening shadow. You turn back towards the inner sanctum. Work is done, but the weight of it remains. You can still feel the texture of the lapis lazuli in your hand, wool of the farmer's tunic, the cool papyrus of the contract, the calls of the people, their hopes and their grievances. You realize that being a priest in ancient Egypt was a profound act of service, a constant engagement with the messy and deeply human realities of life. It was about offering comfort in the face of uncertainty, guidance in the midst of confusion, a semblance of order in a world that often felt chaotic. You know that tomorrow the doors will open again and the people will come, persistent as the flow of the Nile itself. And you will be there, ready to listen, to advise, and to try, in your small way, little more mart into their lives. The night air cools, the scent of the river and the distant sounds of the city settling down. Tomorrow, the cycle will begin anew. Your role as a bridge between the earthly and the divine will continue. The scent of wood, smoke drifts through your consciousness as we begin this journey, primal aroma that whispers of hearths and ancient rituals. Imagine yourself not in a modern bedroom, but on a cool stone floor. The faint scent of lotus blossoms and drying incense clinging to the air. Your awakening isn't to an alarm clock. Hesitant rays of dawn filtering through high, narrow windows, painting stripes of pale gold across the rough-hewn walls. The gentle awakening of leisure. This is the immediate call to duty. You are a priest in the sprawling Karnak temple complex around the reign of Thutmose Athu, some 500 years ago. The chill of the pre-dawn air seeps into your thin linen kilt, the coarse fabric brushing against your skin. Your stomach rumbles softly. Breakfast, a meager portion of barley bread and dates, after the initial rites. But before that, there is the meticulous, demanding work of maintaining the sanctity of the divine. Your first task is the purification of the inner sanctum. This is not a metaphorical cleansing. You will be wielding brushes made from palm fronds, their rough fibers stiff against your palms. The dust that inevitably settles, even in this sacred space. The floor is polished granite beneath your bare feet, but it holds the residue of countless ceremonies, spilled libations and fallen offerings. You must scrub with a mixture of natron and water, leaves your hands feeling raw and dry. The air is thick with the lingering aroma of myrrh and frankincense, a heady perfume that, while pleasant, can also be cloying and overwhelming after hours of exposure. Next, the sacred vessels. The weight of them, gilded bowls, obsidian mirrors, and the intricately carved wooden statues of the gods. Decorations, they are conduits of divine power. You lift a statue of Amun, its cool surface, a stark contrast to the rough stone of the temple walls. The sheer physical effort required to move these objects, often heavy and cumbersome, is immense. You might need to brace yourself against a pillar, your muscles straining from their resting places to the ceremonial chambers. The polished bronze of a sistrum, its metal cool and unyielding, substantial in your grip as you prepare it for the morning's music, the processions. These are perhaps the most visually striking, physically taxing aspects of your role. Picture yourself in a long, white linen robe, prizingly heavy when damp with sweat. You are part of a phalanx of priests, each carrying a sacred bark, shrine bearing the image of a god. These barks are not light, they are often gilded wood, precious stones and intricate carvings designed to awe and inspire. You join your fellow priests, your arms raised, muscles burning as you lift the immense weight. The rhythmic chanting of prayers and hymns fills the air, tapestry that is both invigorating and exhausting. The sun, when it finally breaches the horizon, and of challenge even in the cooler months, even in the oppressive. As you march across the temple courtyards, radiating stored heat, sweat trickles down your back, plastering the linen to your skin. By the procession stings your eyes and coats your throat. You must maintain a dignified pace, your gaze fixed forward, focused on the divine purpose, even as your body cries out for rest. These heavy barkies, You might overhear a fellow priest grumble to another as you pause briefly. They seem to grow heavier with each passing year. His companion, a younger priest named Ani, wipes his brow with the back of his hand. It is the weight of the divine, Senenma, essence of Amun, Re. Our strength is a testament to our faith. You nod in agreement, shoulders ache with a dull throb. The concept of divine strength is a powerful motivator. Is muscle fatigue and aching joints. This is not a life of quiet contemplation in shaded cloisters, active service of physical endurance. As days blur into weeks, you become accustomed to the constant physical exertion. Pace yourself to conserve energy, to anticipate the demands of each ritual. The calluses on your hands become thicker, muscles stronger. You understand that the priests of ancient Egypt were not delicate scholars, they were laborers, artisans, all dedicated to the physical upkeep of the divine. I discovered in the archives of the Turin Papyrus of administrative documents, records of provisions allocated for temple workers, including the priests, for food and incense, but for tools, cleaning supplies, and even ointments for sore muscles. Reminder that the daily operations of these magnificent structures required constant, practical, and often strenuous. It makes you realize that maintaining the grandeur of Karnak was a monumental logistical and physical undertaking. The maintenance of a modern skyscraper or a vast factory, but with the added weight of spiritual significance, role in these processions and in the daily cleaning and care of the temple was far from passive, testament to the belief that the physical world was intrinsically linked to the spiritual. The gods required not just prayer, surroundings, and devoted physical service. This was a tangible expression of faith, a constant reinforcement of the divine presence in the lives of the people. Stark contrast to some modern interpretations of spiritual leadership, feel detached from the mundane realities of physical upkeep. The sun has now climbed higher, its rays intensifying. You can feel the warmth on your skin, the slight dampness of your linen tunic. The air, though still carrying the scent of incense, carries the faint, earthy smell of the Nile mud from the offerings brought in this morning. Your body is tired, certain satisfaction in the work. You have honored the gods with your labor, and in doing so, you have become a vital part of the living, breathing entity that is Karnak. As the midday heat begins to truly settle, seeking a brief respite in the shade of a massive pile of papyrus columned hall, stone beneath your feet offers a welcome relief. The murmuring sounds of other priests engaged in their tasks, the distant clang of a craftsman's hammer, the rustle of papyrus scrolls all blend into a symphony of daily life within the temple precinct. Afternoon will bring more duties, more physical demands. The work of a priest was never truly done. As the shadows begin to lengthen again, you prepare for the evening rites, knowing that tomorrow will bring its own set of physical challenges. The weight of the divine, you realize, is a heavy burden indeed, that requires not just a sharp mind, but a strong back and enduring spirit. What if I told you that everything you thought you knew about this period was incomplete? You've seen the priests as mediators, caretakers of the sacred, as figures cloaked in mystery and ritual. You've felt the weight of their responsibilities, dance between the divine and the earthly, but the true scope of their influence, the sheer, whelming practical genius that underpinned their spiritual authority, has yet to fully unfurl. Today, the very foundations of their power, not in hushed sanctuaries, but amidst the clamor of construction, the grit of stone, thousands We explore their role as architects, engineers, and master administrators of monumental building projects. Egyptian civilization experience becomes your teacher. You find yourself standing on the dusty plains of Giza, sun beating down with an intensity that makes the very air shimmer. The colossal stones of a new mortuary temple for a pharaoh whose name will echo through millennia are being painstakingly moved into place. It's not just brute force, but of planning and execution, and at its heart are the priests. You see them not in their ceremonial robes, typical linen kilts, their skin bronzed by the sun, their eyes sharp and calculating as they confer with overseers, project managers of the ancient world. Imagine the sheer scale of this undertaking. The Temple of Seti at Abydos, for instance, or BCE, is a masterpiece of intricate relief carving and sophisticated architecture. Who conceived its layout? The immense quantities of limestone and granite. Who organized the labor force, ensuring that quarrying, transport, construction proceeded with unwavering efficiency? The answer overwhelmingly lies with the priesthood. Merely passive observers, they were the driving force. You witness a conversation between two senior priests, carrying over the din of hammering and shouting. One, a man named Nebnefer, his face etched with the wisdom of many seasons, gestures towards a partially completed pylon. The alignment must be precise. Capri, he says, his voice low but firm. The solstice sun must strike the inner sanctuary on the appointed day. The scribes have confirmed the calculations, but the stonemasons need constant supervision. A deviation of a single cubit could render our efforts incomplete. Kepri, no less dedicated, nods, his gaze fixed on the massive lintel being slowly maneuvered into position. Masters report a slight delay in the granite shipment from Aswan, Nebnefer. Current is too swift for safe passage of the barges. Nebnefer sighs, the sound a dry rustle in the heat. Vert resources. The priests of Amun, Ra at Karnak, have a surplus of skilled woodworkers. Assist with temporary scaffolding. Reinforce the riverbanks at key points. This is not just spiritual guidance. This is logistics, resource management, solving on a scale that would make modern construction magnates sweat. You discover in the archives fragmented papyri and faded hieroglyphs that the priests were deeply involved in the selection of materials, the properties of different stones, the best quarries, and the most efficient methods of transport. Oversaw the production of vast quantities of tools, from chisels and mallets to levers and rollers, managed the provisioning of the thousands of laborers, ensuring they were fed, housed, and their morale maintained. Logistical nightmare of feeding and housing an army of skilled and unskilled workers for years, even decades on end. A job for the faint of heart or the unimaginative. The artists and artisans, too, answered to the priests. You see a young sculptor, his hands stained with ochre, trial relief panel to a priest who oversees the decorative aspects of the temple. Examines the work with a critical eye, his fingers tracing the contours of a carved lotus. The musculature of the god's arm is too pronounced, almost, he states, his tone devoid of harshness but utterly definitive, is one of serene power, not earthly strain. Recarve it. The hieroglyphs are perfectly proportioned to the surrounding figures. The inscription of the pharaoh's titulary is paramount, earthly reign to the eternal order. He then turns to a painter, applying lapis lazuli pigment to a ceiling fresco. The blue must be vibrant, a reflection of the celestial heavens. Finest malachite for the green accents on the lotus petals. Remember, every stroke is a prayer, a testament to the gods' glory. The sheer artistic and architectural knowledge possessed by these individuals is astounding. Just patrons, they were deeply learned scholars and practical craftsmen. They understood geometry, astronomy, principles that allowed them to erect structures that have defied time. The precise orientation of temples to celestial bodies, the ingenious use of ramps and levers, intricate drainage systems, all were meticulously planned and executed under their guidance. Stark contrast to the often simplified image of priests chanting in dimly lit chambers. Texture of a partially worked stone block beneath your fingertips, cool and solid. The air carries the faint scent of lotus blossoms from a nearby garden, mingled with the acrid tang of sweat and dust. The rhythmic clang of hammers against stone is a constant, almost hypnotic sound. You observe a priest dictating instructions to a scribe, the reed pen scratching across a fresh sheet of papyrus meticulously records the specifications for a new set of ceremonial vessels, designs dictated by ancient religious texts and the priest's own understanding of divine symbolism. Intersection of faith and function, where the sacred is made manifest through tangible, monumental effort. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson, you see the priests gathering for their evening rituals. The day's work lingers. Their prayers are imbued with the knowledge of the colossal tasks they oversee. They have built the very stage upon which their divine dramas are played out. They were not just conduits to the gods, the engineers of the divine presence on earth. This meticulous planning and oversight extended to every facet of temple life. Understand that the priest's administrative skills were as vital to the functioning of Egypt as their spiritual duties, backbone of a society that expressed its faith through stone and gold, through order and monumental ambition. Rest the image of these priests, not just in their sacred roles, but as builders and managers, what truly defines their extraordinary lives. Tomorrow, how this vast network of temples and their construction projects shaped the very landscape of Egyptian society, and how the priests navigated the complex relationships with the royal court that funded these colossal endeavors. Your smartphone weighs more than some of the most precious possessions of this era. Thought that settles in your mind like dust on an ancient tomb. You feel the rough linen of your priest's robe against your skin. Stark contrast to the smooth, cool glass of the device you've left behind. In the healing chamber is thick with the cloying sweetness of lotus blossoms, mingling with the sharp, earthy scent of crushed herbs. Through narrow, high windows casts elongated shadows across the plastered walls, motes dust dancing in the stillness. You hear the faint, rhythmic chanting of your brothers from the main temple, a low hum that vibrates through the stone floor and into the soles of your bare feet. Bath that both grounds you and reminds you of the vastness of the divine. Today, like many days, is entirely on the fragile life before you. A young woman, barely more than a girl, lies on a low cot, her breath shallow, her skin clammy and pale. Her mother, a woman etched with worry lines deeper than the Nile's banks, watches you with desperate eyes. Becomes familiar as you prepare your remedies. It's a delicate dance between the tangible and the unseen. You reach for a small, carved wooden box, its surface worn smooth by countless touches. Inside, nestled on a bed of dried papyrus, trade small bronze lancets, polished smooth, fine linen bandages, and a collection of dried herbs and roots. It's the pungent, almost acrid smell of willow bark known for its pain-relieving properties, and the sweet calming aroma of chamomile. Measure out a portion of dried mandrake root, its potency a double-edged sword capable of both healing and harm if mishandled. This is not mere guesswork. This is knowledge passed down through generations, recorded on papyrus scrolls stored in the temple libraries. I discovered in archives ancient Egyptian medical practices that priests often specialized in particular ailments, much like modern doctors. Some were renowned for their skill in treating eye ailments, others in setting broken bones. Your own specialization, bestowed upon you by the high priest of Sekhmet, is in the treatment of fevers and internal ailments. The young woman's mother offers you a small clay pot containing a mixture of honey and ground myrrh. For strength, O priest, she whispers. With anxiety, you nod, accepting the offering with a respectful bow. May Sekhmet grant her swift recovery. You reply, your voice steady, projecting a confidence you hope to instill in her. You turn back to your patient, carefully examining her tongue. Its dry surface a testament to her fever. You recall a passage from the Edwin Smith Papyrus, surgical treatise dating back to around 1600 BCE, which describes the diagnosis and treatment of various wounds and ailments, testament to the practical, empirical side of Egyptian medicine, a stark contrast to the often misunderstood mystical elements. Core of your healing practice, however, lies in the integration of the physical and the spiritual. Small clay bowl and fill it with fresh water from a sacred well within the temple complex. Into this water, drops poppy seed oil, known for its sedative properties, and a pinch of finely ground natron for purification. As you stir the mixture with a smooth, polished reed, you begin to chant. The words are ancient, incantation designed to invoke the protective powers of Thoth, the god of wisdom and magic, and Sekhmet, fierce goddess of healing and warfare. Your voice, usually measured and calm, takes on a resonant power, filling the small chamber. Feel the energy shift, a subtle hum in the air that prickles your skin. Skill lies in bridging the gap between the observable symptoms and the unseen forces that govern life and death. You carefully administer the concoction to the young woman, her eyelids fluttering weakly as she swallows. Then, apply a poultice of crushed figs and honey to her abdomen, a traditional remedy for internal inflammation. As you work incantations, your hands moving with practiced grace, you visualize Sekhmet's lioness form, aura enveloping the patient. This is not simply superstition, deeply ingrained belief system that informed every aspect of their lives, including their approach to health. Scholarly articles discussing how the Egyptians saw illness as a disruption of cosmic order, a manifestation of malevolent forces. Healing involved not only addressing the physical symptoms, but also appeasing the gods and warding off evil spirits. Marit watches your every move, her hands clasped tightly together. Will she live, O priest? She finally asks, who you meet her gaze, offering a small, reassuring smile. We have done all that we can. Merit will decide her fate, but we have given her the best of our knowledge and our devotion. You then turn to a younger acolyte, Capri, who has been assisting you. Capri, prepare more of the willow bark infusion. Incense of frankincense is burning steadily. We must maintain the sanctity of this space. Capri, his face earnest, and scurries off, his movements quick and precise. He's learning, just as you once learned, immense responsibility that comes with this calling. You spend the rest of the day tending to the young woman, monitoring her breathing, changing her bandages and offering prayers. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting long, across the desert landscape visible through the windows, you feel a familiar exhaustion settling into your bones, born not just of physical exertion, but of the constant mental and spiritual focus required. On faces, when a patient begins to recover, and the profound grief when death claims its due. It's a heavy burden, constant proximity to life and its fragility. You recall a conversation with the high priest Horemheb. Wisdom seemed as ancient as the pyramids themselves. He once told you, our role is not to conquer death. Through its darkest passages, with the knowledge of the earth and the favor of the divine. The routine becomes familiar as you prepare to leave the healing chamber for the night. Clean your instruments, meticulously storing them away. Scent of medicinal herbs and purifying incense still hangs in the air, a testament to the day's work. A final prayer to Sekhmet, a silent plea for continued strength and guidance. The young woman's breathing seems a little more even now, a small flicker of hope in the dimming light. Tomorrow, you will return to continue the battle, armed with your knowledge, your faith, and the ancient wisdom of your predecessors. Responsibility is a constant companion, a reminder that you are a conduit between the mortal and the divine, a vital, unseen pillar of this society. As you step out of the healing chamber and into the cooler evening air, feel the pull of the next day's duties, the quiet urgency of life and death awaiting your attention. And in the quiet of your room, let's step into a world where silence had different meanings. It wasn't the absence of noise, stillness, a palpable tension that settled over the halls of power. You've spent your days, as we've explored, physical needs of the temples, the meticulous planning of rituals, the healing touch of the physician, incense smoke and chanting. A different kind of labor was constantly at play, the delicate, often ruthless, art of politics. You are not merely a servant of the divine, you are a player in a cosmic game, where the favor of mortals can be as crucial as the blessings of the gods. The months teach you that the smooth surfaces of granite and limestone in Karnak are not just for aesthetic beauty or divine reverence, upon which reputations are built and shattered. You've learned to read the subtle shifts in a superior's gaze, imperceptible nod of agreement from a fellow priest, the carefully veiled disapproval of a powerful vizier, grand pronouncements. It's about whispers in shadowed corridors, opportune moments to offer a timely piece of advice, subtly highlight the shortcomings of a rival. Remember the time you were tasked with overseeing the preparation of offerings for the Opet festival, the sheer volume of grain, cussets of beef, the finest linens, all meticulously documented. Your predecessor, a man named Nebnefer, notoriously lax in his accounting, and whispers of his mismanagement had reached the ears of the high priest of Amun himself. You, with your meticulous records, your perfectly organized stores, and your timely reports, had earned a quiet commendation. This wasn't just good practice, it was a political statement. Competence and trustworthiness in a system where such qualities were currency. The days blur into weeks. Find yourself not just reciting prayers, but strategizing. You observe the interactions at the daily audiences with the pharaoh, yourself standing amongst the assembled priests, the air thick with the perfume of lotus and myrrh, streaming through the clerestory windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the sacred air. Pharaoh Ramesses II, a living god on his earthly throne, listens to petitions, dispenses judgments, and bestows favor. You notice how the high priest of Rai at Heliopolis, a man known for his sharp intellect and even sharper tongue, always positions himself to catch the pharaoh's eye at precisely the right moment, seemingly innocuous observation that subtly steers the conversation in his favor. You see the subtle rivalry between the priests of Amun at Thebes and the priests of Ptah at Memphis, each vying for greater influence, resources. For the ear of the king, you learn to cultivate relationships. You might share a meal of flatbread, dates, a small portion of roasted fowl with a scribe from the royal administration, a man named Amenhotep. He controls the flow of papyrus, very medium upon which your reputation and indeed your career is written, a shared jest, a compliment on his elegant hieroglyphs, offering of a small, carved amulet you acquired through your medical practice. These are the threads you weave into the tapestry of influence. Ramun's granaries at Karnak is exceptionally bountiful. Lord Amenhotep, you might say, calm and respectful. I've ensured the finest quality grain is set aside, and I've prepared detailed records. The royal overseers require them. It's not bribery, not in the overt sense. It's fostering goodwill. When your name is mentioned, it's associated with efficiency and reliability. Teach you that loyalty is a fluid concept. You recall a particularly tense period during the reign of a less stable pharaoh, where factions within the priesthood began to solidify. Rumors of priests being swayed by promises of greater land grants or more prestigious temple assignments. You remember a conversation with a senior priest, a man named Pesa, who had served for decades, sat with you in the cool shade of a sycamore fig tree, the rough bark a familiar texture beneath your hand. Strength of our order, my son, he'd said, his voice raspy with age, lies not just in our devotion to the gods, understanding of the men who govern us. A misplaced word, a moment of perceived disrespect, of service can crumble like sand in the desert wind. He spoke of how Horemheb, before he became pharaoh, the treacherous waters of court politics, as a military commander, how the principles were not so different, identifying allies, understanding weaknesses, and always presenting a facade of unwavering devotion, even when your heart churned with doubt. Favor is like the Nile in flood, Pesa continued, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon. It can bring life and prosperity if you misjudge its power. This was not the theology you learned in your youth. This was the practical, often brutal, reality of maintaining your place within the sacred hierarchy. Your hands shake slightly as you recall the pressure. Priests fall from grace, their names struck from inscriptions, their possessions confiscated. It wasn't always for heresy or sacrilege. Sometimes it was simply for backing the wrong horse in a political race, failing to maintain the essential equilibrium of favor. You learn to present yourself not just as a man of piety, valuable asset. When you offered your medical expertise, diagnosing a persistent cough in the pharaoh's favorite hunting hound, providing a calming poultice for a scribe suffering from eye strain, you weren't just healing an animal or a man, demonstrating a skill that benefited the powerful, increasing your own perceived value. This was a constant dance, calibration of piety, competence, and political acumen. It's a stark contrast to modern leadership. Sometimes transparency and directness are valued. Here, suggestion, implication, evasion of personal relationships were paramount. I discovered in the archives of the Serapeum at Saqqara, particularly long research expedition, records of priests meticulously documenting their attendance at royal audiences, contributions to temple renovations, and even their personal gifts to influential courtiers. It's a testament to the pervasive nature of this political maneuvering. Teach you that the weight of your linen kilt feels heavier when you know your every action is being observed. judged against that of your peers. The scent of the incense burning in your personal quarter as no longer just signifies devotion, be a carefully chosen fragrance intended to impress a visiting dignitary or to mask the fainter, desirable odor of a rival's recent indiscretion. The taste of the barley beer, once a simple pleasure, becomes a moment to observe the social dynamics at the refectory, noting who sits with whom, who is being ostracized, is subtly consolidating their influence. You are learning to speak the language of power, spoken in hushed tones and knowing glances, changes as you understand that the true battleground for a priest in the court of the pharaoh was not the temple floor of human relationships. You are not just a servant of the gods, you are a diplomat, a strategist, and at times, as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty courtyards, that tomorrow will bring not just prayers and rituals, but another day of careful navigation, opportunity to solidify your position or to fall victim to the unseen currents of ambition. In your journey will reveal how these political machinations directly impacted the very fabric of Egyptian society, the grand pronouncements, and the everyday lives of its people. Eyes and transport yourself to a time when life moved at a completely different rhythm. You've grappled with the quiet hum of administrative duties, the intricate dance of political favor, and the delicate art of healing. But the true pulse of an Egyptian priest's existence that echoed through the very stones of the temples and resonated in the hearts of the populace was found in the vibrant tapestry of festivals and public performances. These weren't mere displays, very lifeblood of the community, tangible expressions of devotion, critical moments where your role as a priest was laid bare for all to witness. Imagine the weight of that expectation, and the sheer energy required to embody the divine, not just in hushed rituals, but in grand public spectacles. Understanding deepens as you step into the glare of the midday sun, the air thick with the mingled scents of incense, roasting meats, earthy aroma of the Nile. Today is the Opet Festival in Thebes, a colossal event that would last for weeks, drawing people from every corner of the kingdom. You, as a priest of Amunat Karnak, are not merely an observer, you are a participant, a vital cog in a divine machine. The procession is about to begin. You stand in the shadow of the colossal pylons, their surface rich with stories of pharaohs and gods, a testament to millennia of faith. Your linen robe, to an almost luminous white and cinched with a brightly colored sash, feels cool against your skin. Sandals on your feet are simple but sturdy, designed for hours of standing and walking. Around you, the temple courtyards teem with life. Similarly immaculate attire move with practiced grace, carrying gilded standards topped with divine symbols. Musicians, streaked with coal and adorned with flower garlands, tune their instruments, the resonant thrum of the lyre, piercing call of the oboe, the steady beat of the drum. The air vibrates with anticipation. You can feel the collective breath of the thousands gathered outside the temple walls. A sea of faces turn towards the sacred precinct. Sheer scale of it is breathtaking, a stark contrast to the intimate whispers of your medical duties or the hushed tones of your political negotiations. Specific role today is to help escort the sacred bark of Amun, a fishing gilded vessel carried on the shoulders of a select group of priests. This bark, adorned with carvings of gods and hieroglyphs, represents the god himself, traveling to the Luxor temple to visit his consort Mut. You are part of the team responsible for its safe passage, demanding immense physical strength and unwavering focus. The weight of the bark, even before it's fully lifted, is considerable, to the precious materials and intricate craftsmanship involved. As the bearers heave it onto their shoulders, groan of effort mixes with the rising chorus of chanting from the crowds. "Are you ready, Imhotep?" A voice calls out, and steady, it's Amenemhat, a senior priest whose wisdom you've come to rely on. His dark eyes, intellectual curiosity, are now serious, focused on the immense responsibility ahead. You nod, your throat a little dry, as I can be, Amenemhat. The crowds, they are immense. You gesture towards the throng visible beyond the temple gates, tapestry of colourful linen and eager faces. Amenemhat offers a faint smile, his gaze sweeping over the assembled priests. Witness the divine made manifest. Our purpose is to ensure that manifestation is pure, unblemished. Remember the hymns, remember the steps. Your focus is paramount. He claps you lightly on the shoulder. Think of the nourishment the God's presence provides for their souls. Do this. Your understanding deepens as you begin the slow, deliberate march. Karnak to Luxor was not a quick one. It was a procession that unfolded over days, by stops at smaller temples and villages along the Nile. At each stop, there would be further ceremonies, offerings, and performances. You witness elaborate, dramatic reenactments of the gods' myths, performed by specially trained actors and priests. These were not passive viewings. The audience participated through chanting, clapping, and even throwing flowers. Priests were often involved in directing these performances. The narrative remained true to theological doctrine, and that the emotional impact on the congregation was profound. One particular evening, a week into the festival, at a temple near the riverbank, the air was cooler, the sweet perfume of lotus blossoms opening to the moonlight cast flickering shadows on the faces of the assembled crowd, their hushed murmurs a counterpoint to the rhythmic lapping of the Nile. On a raised platform, a group of priests, their bodies painted with symbolic colours, enacted a scene from the creation myth. Were stylized, almost dance-like, conveying the primordial chaos and the emergence of order. You, having completed your duties with the bark, were observing from the side, your own role for this segment being to ensure the purity of the offerings being presented. Look at the precision of their movements, Amenemhat murmured beside you, his voice barely audible above the ambient sounds. Each gesture, each turn of the head is steeped in meaning. It is a language understood by all, from the humblest farmer to the most learned scribe. You watched, mesmerized. Eyes' voices, amplified by the open air, boomed with dramatic intensity. The narrative spoke of the struggle between order and chaos, resonated deeply with the daily lives of the people who relied on the predictable cycles of the Nile and the steadfastness of the divine order. You felt a pang of something akin to envy for the directness of their performance, the immediate connection they forged with the audience. Contributions, while vital, were often more behind the scenes, sacred space, and the integrity of the ritual. It's powerful, you admitted, torches warming your face. To see the stories brought to life like that, Amenemhat nodded, is the heart of our faith made visible, and it is a skill that requires years of dedication, not just in memorizing the texts. Understanding the soul of the performance, specialize in these dramatic arts, are as crucial as those who tend to the rituals or interpret the sacred texts. He paused. Sky discovered in archives recently that during the reign of Thutmose III, the temple at Karnak had a dedicated troupe of actors and musicians, all under the supervision of the priestly college. Their performances were meticulously planned, often incorporating elements of music and dance that had been refined over generations. Your understanding deepens as you consider the sheer logistical and artistic coordination required. Not spontaneous outbursts of joy, they were meticulously planned events, often lasting for weeks, involving hundreds, thousands of participants. The priests were responsible for everything from the procurement of materials, the finest linens, fragrant incenses, the choicest offerings of food and drink to the training of performers and the oversight of the vast crowds. Played on instruments like the harp, lyre and sistrum was integral, and melodies designed to evoke specific emotional and spiritual responses. Dances, too, were not mere entertainment. They were symbolic movements, often depicting the actions of the gods or the cycles of nature. You recall a conversation with a younger priest, Tehamab, who was responsible for the musical ensembles, lamenting the difficulty of finding enough skilled musicians for an upcoming festival dedicated to Sekhmet, goddess of war and healing. The sistrums must be played with the correct fervor, Imhotep. Tamheb explained, his brow furrowed with concern. The sound is meant to both appease and to intimidate, to reflect Sekhmet's dual nature. They must beat with the rhythm of a charging army, yet also the steady heartbeat of life. Simple matter of striking wood. You offered what little advice you could, experiences of maintaining focus amidst chaos. Perhaps you can organize more practice sessions to Hamheb. Repetition, most skilled, sharpens the edge. And remember, the people's devotion is also a form of music. Their chants, their prayers, the symphony. Tahahab looked at you, a flicker of hope in his eyes. You are right. Collective spirit, it is a powerful instrument in itself. I will remind the musicians of that. This was the essence of it. Quiet contemplation and the learned debates. The priest was a performer, a conductor, a storyteller, constantly on display, your actions and demeanor reflecting the divine order you served. The very stones of the temples seemed to hum with this energy, a constant reminder of the public nature of your sacred duties, a demanding, exhausting, and utterly consuming existence, a far cry from the solitary contemplation some might imagine. You were the living embodiment of faith for the people, and that required a stamina and a presence that few could sustain. Echoes of the festival's music begin to fade. You find yourself already contemplating the meticulous preparations for the next major observance, a cycle that would continue unwavering. The seasons and the years. Imagine waking up in an era where your biggest worry wasn't Wi-Fi connectivity, political tweet, but rather the precise alignment of the stars and the appeasement of divine forces. Flutter open to the cool, smooth stone of your sleeping chamber, stilt of lotus and myrrh still clinging to the air from the evening rituals. The first rays of Ra, the sun god, beginning paint the eastern sky in hues of rose and gold, filtering through the narrow, high windows of the temple complex. You, Rai at Karnak, are already expected to be awake, to be prepared. The weight of your linen kilt, to an almost ethereal white, settles around your waist. It's a simple garment, yet it signifies a profound purity, separation from the common populace. The cool, fine linen against your skin is a constant reminder of your elevated status, responsibility that accompanies it. You can almost taste the dust of ages settling on your tongue, a dry that permeates everything. The soft rustle of your sandals on the polished limestone floor is the only sound as you rise, amplifying the stillness of pre-dawn. You are not just a man, you are a conduit, a bridge. Your entire existence is dedicated to maintaining the delicate balance between the mortal realm and the divine. continued favor of the gods upon Egypt, and most importantly, upon Pharaoh himself. Your perspective shifts when you consider the Pharaoh not as a mere ruler, but as the living embodiment of Horus, the son of Osiris, representative of the gods. It is through the Pharaoh that divine will is manifested in the world, and it is your sacred duty as a priest to facilitate this connection. You are the intermediary, the interpreter of the gods' desires, translates their pronouncements into actions that govern the lives of millions. Personal opinion or political negotiation, it is a cosmic imperative. When Pharaoh wishes to understand the gods will regarding a new building project, a military campaign, annual inundation of the Nile, it is you he turns to. You will spend hours in fasting, in prayer, the meticulous performance of ancient rites, seeking divine insight. The gods speak through omens, through dreams, brick of existence, and it is your specialized knowledge, honed over years of rigorous training, allows you to perceive and interpret these messages. Consider a typical day, or rather, a typical moment that would define your role before the inner sanctuary of Amun-Ra. The air thick with incense, a heady perfume that makes your head spin slightly. The golden statue of the god, gleaming in the flickering lamplight, seems to pulse with an inner energy. Before you, alabaster altar, lies a platter of offerings, fresh bread, figs, dates, and a jug of cool beer. Your hands, shaved, tremble slightly as you lift a small, intricately carved incense burner. The fragrant smoke curls upwards, visible prayer ascending to the heavens. You can feel the eyes of the other priests, a silent, watchful presence. Incantations, the words ancient and resonant, flow from your lips, a language understood by the divine. Just reciting, you are channeling. You feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere, presence that makes the hairs on your arms stand on end. It's a terrifying and exhilarating sensation, moment of divine communication. Later, you will be summoned to the royal palace, a sprawling complex of mud brick and polished stone, scent of blooming papyrus and the distant cries of exotic birds filling the air. Pharaoh, perhaps Ramesses II himself, seated on his gilded throne, his name's headdress casting a shadow over his stern, regal face. Throne room is heavy with anticipation. You approach, bowing low, your bare feet silent on the cool, painted tiles. "Oh, Ra," Pharaoh's voice booms, deep and commanding, resonating with authority. "The Nile's flood is upon us. Message do the gods send regarding the harvest. Your heart pounds against your ribs. This is the moment. The morning meticulously examining the entrails of a sacrificed ox, a practice that would make any modern person recoil. Signs and portents. You recall the specific patterns, the subtle discolorations, the way the blood had pooled. You also remember a dream, a vision of the god Happy, the personification of the Nile flood, smiling benignly upon the fertile fields. Your Majesty, you begin, your voice steady despite the inner turmoil. You choose your words with extreme care, shape the destiny of Egypt. The gods are pleased. Happy has blessed our lands. The inundation will be bountiful. The fields will yield a rich harvest, and our people shall know prosperity. You might add a specific detail, warning to be vigilant against locusts, a common threat, but one that the gods have also provided foresight for. Not merely reporting, you are interpreting the divine will into actionable intelligence for the earthly ruler. Pharaoh nods, a flicker of relief crossing his face. He trusts your word implicitly, for you are his link to the sacred. He then turns to his vizier, a man named Paiser, who meticulously records your pronouncements, ensuring they are implemented without question. This is the chain of command to Pharaoh, and then through you to the administration of the kingdom. It is a system built on faith, on tradition, absolute authority of the pre-priesthood. Your interactions are not limited to Pharaoh. You also advise lesser officials, generals, scribes, all seeking divine guidance for their own endeavors, yourself explaining the meaning of a particular constellation's movement to a general, planning a campaign in Nubia, interpreting a dream for a scribe struggling with a particularly complex inscription. Interaction reinforces your position as the ultimate authority on matters spiritual and by extension, matters of state. The scent of the temple precinct, a mixture of sacred oils, burning incense, and the faint, metallic tang of blood from recent sacrifices, constant companion. But the rough texture of the papyrus scrolls you consult, filled with ancient wisdom and astrological charts, familiar beneath your fingertips. I discovered in archives, or rather meticulous study of hieroglyphic inscriptions and priestly papyri, that this role was not one of passive observation. Actively participated in the administration of justice, their pronouncements often carrying the weight of divine decree. Temple estates, which were vast economic powerhouses, overseeing agriculture, craftsmanship, and trade, their responsibility was immense, far exceeding the simple act of worship. They were scholars, administrators, physicians, as we touched upon previously, and the keepers of Egypt's collective memory. The weight of this knowledge, this power, unbearable burden for any modern individual to carry, the constant pressure to be infallible, misinterpret the will of the gods, would be a constant source of anxiety. Your perspective shifts when you consider the sheer dedication required. This isn't a 9 to 5 job. It's a life sentence in a world governed by rituals, prayers, and the unwavering belief in the divine. You are expected to be pure from certain foods, to maintain rigorous physical and spiritual discipline. The constant shaving of your body, cleansing rituals spent in contemplation, it all contributes to an existence that is entirely devoted to service. Calluses forming on your knees from countless hours of prostration, the ache in your shoulders from carrying sacred objects. Air you breathe seems to be imbued with the divine, a constant hum of spiritual energy that both sustains and exhausts you. As the sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the temple courtyards, you prepare for the next phase of your duties. It's a public sermon or a private audience with a nobleman seeking a blessing. The intricate patterns on your ceremonial robes, embroidered with gold thread and depicting scenes of divine triumph, feel both heavy and comforting. Your responsibilities is a constant, but it is also the very essence of your being. You are the voice of the gods, Egypt's spiritual well-being, and the indispensable link in the chain that binds the mortal world to the divine. Sheer magnitude of this role, the absolute reliance placed upon your every word and action, thought that would truly challenge anyone from our era to comprehend, let alone endure. And as the day progresses, the Egyptian sun begins to truly bake the earth. You will continue your tireless work, a silent, full force shaping the very fabric of life in this ancient land, a life that is a world away from our own, to a belief system that demanded an almost unimaginable level of devotion. Tomorrow, deeper into the intricate daily routines that defined this existence, the quiet moments of personal reflection that punctuated these grand duties. History settles gently on your shoulders as our story begins. You find yourself not in a grand hall of judgment, the jubilant throngs of a festival, but in the quiet, meticulous workshops of the temple. The air here is thick with the scent of beeswax, cedarwood, and the faint lingering perfume of lotus blossoms. Sunlight, filtered through high, narrow windows carved into the thick limestone walls, paints dusty golden shafts across worn stone floors. This is where the tangible soul of the divine is tended, where the sacred objects, the priestly vestments, precincts of the gods are kept in a state of perpetual, unwavering purity. Gradually, that the true labor of a priest is not always in chanting or decree, but in the diligent, often unseen, maintenance of the sacred. Your hands, once accustomed to the delicate brushwork of your scrolls, now learn the rougher, more demanding art of polishing precious metals. You are tasked with the care of the Eshen rings, symbols of eternity, their gold gleaming dully under your ministrations. The soft texture of the polishing cloth against the cool, unyielding metal is a tactile meditation. You meticulously clean the Ev Urius, the cobra symbol of divine authority, adorning the headdresses of the statues, ensuring not a speck of dust mars its serene, watchful gaze. Of the cloth, the soft, metallic hum as you work, subtle scent of the polishing paste, it all contributes to a profound sense of purpose. The garments, too, unwavering dedication. You are shown the art of linen preparation, a process far removed from the simple washing you might imagine. The fine linen, woven from the flax that grows along the fertile banks of the Nile, must be bleached to an almost ethereal whiteness, signifies purity and reverence. You learn to starch it with a paste made from wheat or barley, press it with heated stones until it possesses a crispness that crackles softly when handled. Priests wear these garments for their rituals, and their immaculate condition is a direct reflection of the divine service. A hushed conversation with the senior priest, Amenhotep, was as weathered as the desert rocks, but whose hands moved with the grace of a dancer. The gods, he had murmured, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. See the devotion not just in our prayers, but in the very threads we wear. Garment is a stain upon our service. I discovered in archives, priests in some periods were required to wear linen that was not only white but also free from any dyes or embellishments, emphasizing the absolute purity expected. This was a stark contrast to the vibrant, worn by the elite in other aspects of Egyptian society. The temple precincts themselves are a living entity, requiring constant attention. The courtyards must be swept daily, not just to remove debris, symbolically cleans the space of any earthly defilement. The hieroglyphs carved into the towering pylons, depicting scenes of divine triumph and royal piety, are gently brushed to preserve their clarity. The water channels that crisscross the complex, used for purification rites, and the temple's own irrigation, free of silt and fallen leaves. You join a team tasked with clearing the sacred lake, its still waters reflecting the azure sky. Air rises from its surface, carrying the earthy smell of mud and aquatic plants. Splash of oars as you pole the small skiffs, the gentle tug of weeds against your hands as you pull them from the water. Cry of a ibis, it's a symphony of quiet labor. One afternoon, while meticulously cleaning the base of a statue of Sekhmet, goddess, a young acolyte Capri, approached you, his face flushed with exertion. He was carrying a heavy amphora of sacred oil. He began, his voice a little breathless. The oil for the evening anointing. It has a sediment. Do you examine the amphora? The oil, a rich, viscous substance, indeed, has a fine, powdery residue settled at the bottom. Instructions given to you by the chief priest, Tames, a man whose stern demeanor belayed a deep well of patience, is in the purity, not the abundance. Times had told you, his eyes fixed on a perfectly polished offering bowl, is impure. It cannot truly honor the gods. Strain it through the finest linen. Impurity reaches the sacred vessel. You instruct Khepri, his hands as he carefully pours the oil through a tightly woven linen cloth into a cleaner container. The process is slow, deliberate, steady hand. The scent of the oil, a mixture of myrrh and frankincense, fills the air around you. Khepri, that this meticulousness is not just a chore, but a form of prayer, a tangible act of devotion that pleases the gods. Parallel to ensuring the purity of ingredients in a laboratory or the careful calibration of sensitive equipment, absolute precision remains the same even if the materials and the purpose differ vastly. You recall another instance, preparations for a festival honoring Osiris. The priests were meticulously repairing a ceremonial barge, its wooden adorned with intricate carvings. A small section of the hull had been damaged, a splintered crack marring its smooth surface. A gruff but skilled man named Meron was struggling to find a suitable adhesive. You remembered reading in a papyrus fragment that the ancient Egyptians used a strong glue made from animal hides and bone, thick, gelatinous substance. You found the temple's stores of this substance, its texture surprisingly rubbery when cold, softening into a potent adhesive when warmed. Meron, initially skeptical, applied the warmed glue and pressed the splintered wood into place, securing it with linen bandages until it dried. Smell of the heated animal glue was potent, a primal earthy scent that filled the workshop. When the repair was complete, Meron grunted his approval, a rare compliment. Your knowledge, he said, wiping his brow with a calloused hand, is as useful as any chisel. This task, so seemingly mundane, was essential to the proper observance of the festival, ensuring the sacred barge was fit to carry the god's effigy. Gradually, you realized that this constant upkeep, this relentless attention to detail, is the very bedrock of the priesthood, quiet hum of devotion that underpins the grand pronouncements and the dazzling rituals. Understanding that the divine is not an abstract concept, but something that must be physically manifested and maintained in a state of perfect purity. The hours blur, the changing angle of the sun, and the subtle shifts in the temple's sounds. The scent of incense becomes a constant companion. The dry, papery smell of ancient texts and the cool, mineral scent of the stone. Your hands, once soft, show the signs of your labor, small nicks, calluses, and the faint, ingrained scent of beeswax. Of the priesthood, a life of constant, often unglamorous, but profoundly important service. As the day draws to a close, rays of the sun paint the temple walls in hues of orange and purple. You find yourself preparing for the evening ablutions. Drawn from the sacred lake is warm and scented with lotus. The ritual is simple, yet profound. You wash your hands, your face, symbolically cleansing yourself of the day's earthly contact before approaching the inner sanctum. Feel the presence of the gods in the stillness, a palpable energy that permeates the air. This meticulous cleansing, preparation for the divine, is a constant in your life, a quiet prelude to the unfolding mysteries of the night. The weight of history, you understand now, is not just in the stories told, but in the meticulous care taken to preserve the physical vessels of those stories. Rest, the sounds of the temple, the distant chanting, the soft rustle of priestly robes, lapping of water lull you into a deep sleep, ready for another day of maintaining the sacred. And in your dreams, you see not grand pronouncements, but the gleam of polished gold and the crisp fold of immaculate linen. stepping through time into a world that operated by entirely different rules, a world where the hum of the divine was as palpable as the desert sun on your skin. You've spent your day, the first blush of dawn, at the Temple of Karnak in Thebes, a sprawling complex dedicated to Amun-Ra, performing rites and rituals, your priestly duties, as detailed in papyri from the New Kingdom. The reign of Thutmose III around 1479 BCE were an intricate dance of devotion and obligation. You've bathed, donned the finest linen robes, starched to perfection. The air in the inner sanctum, with incense, myrrh, and frankincense, now feels heavy, not with sacred smoke, sheer weight of your physical and mental fatigue. Your muscles ache with a deep, insistent throb. The hours spent standing, the same prayerful posture, have left your legs feeling like leaden pillars. Your feet, accustomed to the cool, night floors, protest with every shift of weight. Your back, from countless prostrations and the careful carrying of sacred vessels, feels like a tightly woolly wound spring on the verge of snapping. Fine linen, meant to be light and airy, now clings to your skin. Day's exertion and the unyielding heat of the Egyptian afternoon. You can almost feel the phantom weight of the sistrum, a constant, if now distant, companion to your wary ears. Your hands, usually steady and precise, as you reach for a jug of cool water. The skin on your palms feels rougher than usual, a testament to the constant polishing of bronze statues and the meticulous preparation of offerings. The scent of lotus blossoms, typically find uplifting, now seems cloying, adding to the general sense of oversaturation. Perspective shifts when you consider the mental toll. It's not just the physical demands, but the relentless focus required. Every incantation, every offering of bread, beer, and perfumed oils must be performed with absolute precision. A single misstep, a forgotten prayer, could be interpreted as an insult to the gods, a disruption of Ma'at, the cosmic order. Reciting hymns to Amun-Ra, the king of the gods, his power and benevolence the bedrock of your existence. The sheer volume of prayers, the intricate genealogies of the gods, astronomical observations that dictated the timing of certain rituals, it all swirls in your mind, sacred knowledge that has been meticulously poured in since your youth. You recall the early morning hours, darkness broken only by the flickering oil lamps, as you prepared the sacred offerings. The smell of roasting fowl, aroma of honey cakes, now seems a distant memory, replaced by the lingering, slightly acrid scent of spent lamp oil. You recall a brief, hushed conversation with High Priest Meremptar earlier in the day, his voice a low rumble that seemed to carry the weight of generations. Horemheb, he had said, his gaze steady, us for stability. The Nile has receded, and the harvest promises to be bountiful, thanks to the favor of Amun-Ra. Remain vigilant. The whispers from the northern frontier speak of unrest. For the Pharaoh and for the prosperity of Kemet are more vital than ever. Meremptar, whose age was etched in the deep lines around his kind eyes, had then, surprisingly strong for its weathered appearance, "Rest, my son. The gods demand much, but even they understand the need for replenishment." His words only amplified the gnawing anxiety that lay beneath the surface of your fatigue. The responsibility felt immense, tangible burden pressing down on your chest. Your perspective shifts when you consider the sheer volume of interconnected tasks. The grand ceremonies. You've spent hours overseeing the scribes, ensuring the accurate recording of temple inventories, allocation of grain, and the meticulous upkeep of the temple's vast estates. mediate a dispute between two junior priests over the proper method of purifying a sacred statue, a disagreement that, seemingly minor, could have wider implications if not resolved according to established precedent. Texts like the pyramid texts, which, though older, laid the groundwork for later priestly traditions. You remember the sharp of the polishing paste as you helped a younger priest buff a bronze mirror in ritualistic observances to reflect divine light. The texture of the smooth, cool metal under your fingertips sensation now feels like an unwelcome imposition. Later, you shared a simple meal with a fellow priest, Amenhotep, in the communal refectory. The air was thick with the mingled scents of lentil stew and stale bread. Amenhotep, of a single oil lamp, sighed, his voice raspy. Another day, Horemheb, I swear, is as empty as a beggar's bowl. Barely recall the names of the lesser deities we invoked this afternoon. He gestured with a piece of flatbread, his movement slow and deliberate. And tomorrow it begins again, the dawn rituals, offerings. It feels as though we are caught in an endless cycle, a river that flows but never reaches the sea. You nodded in agreement, the taste of the watery beer doing little to quench your thirst. But servants, Amenhotep, our purpose is to maintain the flow. Divine river continues to nourish our land. The simple act of chewing the dense bread felt like a monumental effort. Swallow, a conscious act of will. Your perspective shifts when you think about the impact of all this on your own inner life. The constant adherence to purity laws, the abstention from certain foods and activities, the unwavering devotion, it leaves little room for personal reflection or indulgence. You haven't seen your family in weeks, duties keeping you tethered to the temple precincts. The memory of your wife's laughter, a sound like tinkling bells, a dream from another lifetime. The rough weave of your simple sleeping tunic, a stark contrast to the fine linen of your priestly attire, scratches against your skin as you finally settle onto your straw-filled pallet. The sounds of the city outside, the distant braying of donkeys, voices from the workers' quarters are muted by the thick mud brick walls. They still intrude upon the silence you crave. You close your eyes, and the images of the day, the shimmering gold of the temple icons, stern faces of the statues, the endless rows of hieroglyphs continue to play behind your eyelids. You realize with a profound weariness, this exhaustion is not merely physical, it is a soul-deep fatigue, effect of a life dedicated to the service of the gods and the maintenance of order. It's a testament to the immense energy and discipline required to be a priest in ancient Egypt, role far removed from the simple veneration often depicted. You find yourself longing for the quiet solitude of your small chamber, of the stone walls against your cheek, the blessed oblivion of sleep, the subtle scent of dried herbs in your room to ward off insects offers a faint, earthy comfort. You can almost feel the weight of the world, the prosperity of Egypt, resting on your spent shoulders, a burden you willingly bear, but one that leaves you utterly depleted. Your perspective shifts when you consider what tomorrow will bring. The cycle will begin anew, the sun will rise, and the rituals will continue. But for tonight, there is only the profound, all-encompassing exhaustion, a quiet surrender to the deep, restorative embrace of sleep, a temporary reprieve before the demands of Kemet call you once more. The faint sound of a distant chant, lingering echo of the day's devotions, fades into the darkness as your breathing deepens, preparing you for the next dawn, chapter in the life of a devoted servant. I wonder what it would feel like to truly experience life in this distant time, not just as an observer, inhabitants. You've walked the hallowed halls, felt the weight of sacred duties, and tasted the dust of ages. Now, as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Nile, you begin to truly grasp the profound personal cost of such a life. Sacrifice woven into the very fabric of existence, a silent pact made with the gods and the pharaoh. Your understanding deepens as you consider the limited family life that was the priest's lot. Quiet ache in your chest as you watch other men, artisans or farmers returning to their homes, echoing with the warmth of shared meals and the chatter of children. Your own chambers, meticulously clean and filled with the comforting scent of incense and polished wood, remain solitary. Mine demands your constant attention, leaving little room for the earthly bonds of marriage and progeny. You might have a wife, perhaps, for her piety and understanding of your sacred calling, but the intimacy, the shared dreams whispered in the dark, overshadowed by the looming presence of the temple, children, if they come, are a blessing, is largely left to others, their early years a blur of rituals and temple duties you cannot fully partake in. Perhaps during festivals, their small faces alight with wonder. Cradle them in your arms. After a long day's labor, cannot teach them the simple joys of a game played in the village square. This quiet renunciation is a constant, subtle thrum beneath the surface of your devotion. Slowly but surely, social isolation begins to take root. While you are respected, even revered by the common folk, there is an invisible barrier, sacred knowledge and ritualistic purity that separates you. Your days are spent in the company of other priests, by the same severe discipline and profound understanding of the divine. You discuss theological intricacies, the proper invocation of a particular deity, and meticulously oversee the temple's vast operations. But the easy camaraderie of the marketplace, boisterous tales shared in a tavern, if such a place even existed in a manner you'd recognize, luxuries you can no longer afford. Your conversations are often hushed, reverent, and focused on matters of the divine. You might engage in discussions with scribes or architects, but these interactions are functional, transactional, spontaneous warmth of genuine friendship. You recall conversations with Horemheb, a respected general, during a royal procession. His talk of military campaigns and the camaraderie of soldiers felt alien, a world away from your own. He was respectful, admiring of your role, but you sensed a fundamental difference in your lived experiences that no amount of shared history could truly bridge. The scent of sweat and leather from his armor was a stark contrast to the cool temple sanctuary. The absence of personal freedom is perhaps the most profound sacrifice. Your life is not your own. To the gods, to the pharaoh, the cosmic order you are sworn to uphold. Waking moment is dictated by a strict schedule of prayers, purification rites, offerings, meticulous maintenance of sacred spaces. You wake before dawn, the chill of the pre-dawn air raising goosebumps on your skin. Relentless cycle of duty. There are no spontaneous excursions, pastorals through the papyrus marshes, simply to enjoy the sunset. Even your thoughts are, in a way, not entirely your own. Be constantly aligned with the divine will. You remember a time, perhaps in your youth, before the priesthood, dreamed of traveling to distant lands, of experiencing the vibrant cultures of Nubia or the bustling ports of the Levant. Your world is circumscribed by the temple walls, your horizons defined by the sacred texts and the pronouncements of the high priest, discovered in the archives of Karnak, particularly arduous translation of hieroglyphic inscriptions from the reign of Amenhotep I, circa 1390 BCE, series of personal prayers etched onto a small shard of pottery. They spoke of longing for a simple meal shared with loved ones, quiet reflection, unburdened by divine mandate. Stark reminder that even those closest to the gods harbored human desires, a testament to the immense self-discipline required. The weight of this understanding settles upon you like a shroud. You can almost feel the rough texture of the linen worn by the common laborers, hear the distant bleating of sheep, the earthy aroma of freshly baked bread wafting from a village hearth, sensations that are now, for you, a life you have willingly relinquished. Your hands, delicate handling of sacred amulets, and the precise pouring of libations, now feel the caluses of constant ritual. Cool stone of the temple floor beneath your bare feet is a familiar sensation, signifies the boundary between your world and the world outside. You might recall a fleeting moment of envy, whisper of a thought when you saw a group of children chasing a hoop in the temple courtyard, unburdened by the weight of cosmic responsibility. Their freedom, their uninhibited joy, is a stark contrast to the measured reverence that defines your existence. This life, purpose, and a profound connection to the divine is also a life of profound solitude. You are a conduit, a servant, a guardian of sacred mysteries. The warmth of human connection, the simple pleasures of personal freedom, these are the prices you pay for your elevated station. As you prepare for the evening rituals, your fellow priests a low hum in the vast hall. You feel a quiet acceptance. This is the path you have chosen, you have embraced. Your perspective shifts when you consider the enduring legacy of these priests, the keepers of knowledge, the architects of faith, and the silent pillars of a civilization. But the human cost, the personal toll, often left untold. Tomorrow you will continue your duties, already anticipating the dawn prayers and the meticulous tending of the sacred flame. Slowly but surely, as the moon ascends, feel the familiar rhythm of the temple settling in, a rhythm that has dictated your life for years. The quiet hum of the priest's chants, the faint scent of myrrh and lotus, these are the lullabies of your existence, a constant reminder of the life you lead, a life of immense privilege and equally immense sacrifice. Internal world of these priests. What anxieties lurked beneath their serene exteriors? They grapple with the very human emotions that their divine calling seemed to demand. They suppress. Lured from period dramas, the truth is far more fascinating. You wouldn't last a day as an Egyptian priest. The romanticized images of serene contemplation, of scholarly pursuits under the benevolent gaze of the sun god Ra, under the sheer, unrelenting weight of reality. We've walked through the meticulous upkeep of sacred linen, cleansing of divine statues, the crushing physical demands of temple labor. We've felt the gnawing hunger, deep exhaustion, the constant pervasive fear of divine displeasure. Part 18 painted a picture of your hands, calloused and raw, carelessly polishing bronze censers, their metallic tang sharp in the morning air, burnt incense clinging to your skin like a second shadow. You recall the rough weave, the priest's kilt against your thighs, the cool, smooth stone of the temple floor beneath your bare feet. Prayers a constant, hypnotic drone. Part 19 brought you to the brink of collapse. Cycle of purification rituals, the early mornings that blurred into late nights. Strain of remembering countless prayers and incantations. The hyperstyle hall would grow thick with the accumulated heat of hundreds of bodies, scent of sweat and sacred oils mingling with the dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight. You'd hear the rhythmic chanting of the acolytes, sound that could either soothe thee or drive you to distraction depending on the state of your frayed nerves. 20 explored the profound sacrifices, the distant, almost abstract concept of family, gnawing ache of missing a child's first steps, a wife's gentle touch, the taste of the coarse barley bread, the watery lentil stew, sustenance, yes, but hardly a pleasure, a stark contrast to the vibrant feasting you might have glimpsed from afar in the homes of the wealthy. The world around you evolves. What it meant to be a priest in ancient Egypt, say around the New Kingdom period, during the reign of Ramesses II at Karnak, remains a stark, unvarnished truth. Your day didn't begin with a gentle awakening, sharp, insistent call of a fellow priest, his voice raspy from the night's vigil. You would rise from your straw mat, fibers scratching against your skin, the chill of the pre-dawn air biting at your exposed limbs. The first task, the sun crested the eastern horizon, would be purification. Not a quick shower, but a thorough, in cold water, often drawn from the Nile, its murky depths carrying the scent of silt and unseen life. Just about hygiene, it was about spiritual cleanliness, a shedding of the mundane to approach the divine. Your hands, the coarse natron salt into your skin, would sting from the earlier work of polishing and cleaning. The taste of the salt and mineral would linger on your tongue. Then came the garments, not the flowing, pristine white robes of popular imagination, of fine linen starched and pressed to a stiff perfection. The weight of the fabric, though light, felt substantial, reminder of your sacred duty. The smell of the linen, fresh from being washed and dried in the desert sun, clean and slightly dry, perhaps with a hint of the perfumed oils used in the cleaning process. You'd fasten the kilt, weave a familiar comfort, and adjust the simple pectoral, perhaps depicting a sacred scarab, its cool, small anchor in the chaos of the day. The morning rituals were a symphony of sensory input. Aroma of incense, frankincense, and myrrh, prized commodities. Their scent, thick and resinous, would fill the inner sanctum. Hymns, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated in your very bones, would echo through the stone corridors. You'd see the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows on the hieroglyph covered walls, intricate carvings of gods and pharaohs seeming to watch your every move. The taste of the sacred offerings, consecrated bread and fruit, would be bland, a symbol of sustenance rather than a culinary delight. Consider the sheer physical labor. While the high priests might have officiant ceremonies, the lower ranks were the backbone. You would be involved in the meticulous cleaning of the temple complex, a sprawling city in itself, sweeping vast courtyards, scrubbing floors, carrying water, sacred gardens where offerings of herbs and flowers were cultivated. The sun, by midday, would beat down relentlessly, radiating from the stone surfaces, the air thick and heavy. Your skin would prickle with sweat, the rough linen clinging to your back. The dust, kicked up by passing processions or the ceaseless activity, would coat your throat, gritty sensation. Let's delve into a specific interaction. Imagine you are Brother Senemat, a junior priest in your late teens, Amun-Ra at Karnak around 1350 BCE, tasked with polishing the bronze plating on a colossal statue of Amun. Your hands ache, tang of the polishing paste sharp in your nostrils. The sheer scale of the statue is overwhelming, tiny speck at its base, craning your neck to reach the gleaming metal. Suddenly, a senior priest, perhaps named Epu, approaches, carrying the authority of years of service. Senemat, are you taking your time? The sun waits for no man, must not be diminished by sloth. His linen kilt is immaculate, his shaved head gleaming. You feel a surge of anxiety in your stomach. "Forgive me, esteemed Epu." You stammer, your voice hoarse. "The work is demanding." Epu lets out a short that seems to echo off the massive stone pillars. "Demanding. This is but a fraction of the devotion required. This is hard. Try fasting for 3 days during the Opet festival. Book of from memory way when your stomach cramps with hunger and your eyes burn from lack of sleep." He gestures to a stack of linen garments awaiting folding. "Be folded before the evening rites. And remember, your offering to Amun today was merely a handful of dates." "I saw it. I am sees all. Ensure your devotion is proven by your actions, not your excuses." The raw scent of the dates, sweet and sticky, offering table, a cruel reminder of what you cannot truly partake in. Monologue would be a constant battle between ingrained obedience and the creeping weariness. Another hour. Just another hour of this. My back aches. My fingers are raw. I haven't seen my family in months. Even recognize my youngest daughter if I ever get leave. The taste of stale water from a communal jug does little to quench your thirst. Low hum of the temple, the shuffling of feet, the distant chanting, sharp cry of a temple bird forms a monotonous soundtrack to your existence. You discover in archives, through fragmented papyri and inscriptions on temple walls, that priests were often recruited from noble families, faced a rigorous life. The idea of a priest being an idle scholar is a myth. They were administrators, scribes, artisans, and laborers, all within the sacred precincts. The dedication was absolute, expected to maintain a level of ritual purity that would be impossible for a modern individual to comprehend. Imagine, for a moment, the sheer mental discipline required to suppress all impure thoughts, to constantly be aware of your actions and their spiritual implications, forming physically demanding tasks under the scorching Egyptian sun. The world around you evolves, and with it, dying. The notion of a priest today, while demanding, is vastly different. You might spend hours in prayer or contemplation. The constant immersion in a world governed by divine law and ritualistic perfection is incomparable. The simple comforts: a soft bed, a varied diet, the freedom to speak your mind without fear of divine retribution. Miss the privacy, the personal space, the very concept of leisure. Bridge to the next sub-part will explore how this rigorous life shaped the very individuals who lived it. Legacy they left behind, a legacy far more complex and challenging than any drama could ever convey. People think they understand this historical period, but nothing could be further from the truth. You've spent days, weeks perhaps, the quiet hum of the temple, the rhythmic chanting, a constant undercurrent to your existence. Tasted the coarse barley bread, felt the rough linen against your skin, the perpetual scent of incense and Nile water. You've experienced the exhaustion, the gnawing hunger, rituals that demanded every ounce of your physical and mental fortitude. You've grappled with the isolation, sacrifices of a normal life, the constant scrutiny of those around you. You've followed the intricate rules of purity, ours the weight of responsibility. You've begun to grasp, not just intellectually, but viscerally, the sheer reality of what it meant to be a priest in ancient Egypt. This wasn't a mere job, complete absorption of self into the divine order. As the seasons change, expands beyond the personal struggle to the broader tapestry of Egyptian society. The temple wasn't an isolated entity, beating heart of the community, and the priests its vital organ. Mental structures that still stand today, Karnak, Luxor, Abu Simbel. These weren't just places of worship, economic power, administrative hubs and repositories of knowledge. You, as a priest to all of these, you managed vast estates overseen by scribes whose meticulous records, some of which I've had the privilege to study in the dusty archives of the Louvre, detail the temples holding vast tracts of land, overflowing with grain, herds of cattle, flocks of sheep, and even fleets of boats plying the sacred Nile. Power translated into immense influence. Consider the social fabric. While the pharaoh was the divine ruler, the priests were the intermediaries, the interpreters of the god's will. They advised the pharaoh, performed crucial ceremonies that ensured the Nile's flood and the sun's rise, the very bedrock of Egyptian survival. You would have been involved in the elaborate festivals like the Opet festival in Thebes, where the statues of Amun, Mut, and Khonsu were paraded from Karnak to Luxor. Imagine the crowds, the joyous uproar, the scent of lotus blossoms and roasted meats filling the air, the vibrant colors of the processions. Your role in these events, perhaps behind the scenes, was critical. You prepared the sacred vessels, chanted the hymns of praise, purity of the sacred precincts. Your hands, calloused from daily tasks, were also the hands that touched the divine. Economic and social, there was the intellectual. The temples were the great libraries and universities of their time, were the keepers of knowledge, meticulously copying sacred texts, astronomical observations, medical treatises, calculations onto papyrus scrolls. The Edwin Smith papyrus, for instance, medical text dating back to around 1600 BCE, showcases the advanced medical understanding that priests possessed, diagnosis, prognosis, and treatments for various ailments. You would have spent hours in dimly lit scriptoriums, reed pens on papyrus, a constant sound preserving wisdom for millennia. This wasn't just religious devotion, the preservation of civilization itself. You were not merely chanting prayers, safeguarding the very essence of Egyptian culture. Let me paint a picture. You are a junior priest, Peti in Memphis during the New Kingdom around 1300 BCE, thick with the aroma of burning frankincense and myrrh, a scent so potent it almost coats your tongue, streams through the high, narrow windows of the sanctuary, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. You are clad in a simple, meticulously cleaned and pressed. Your head is shaved, a sign of purity. Before you stands the high priest. Face is a roadmap of devotion, his eyes holding a depth of knowledge you can only aspire to. The inundation is late this year, the high priest says, his voice a low rumble that seems to resonate with the very stones of the temple, towards a celestial chart etched onto a plaster wall. The stars are not aligning as they should. Redouble our efforts in the rituals for happy. You nod, your stomach tightening with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Happy, Nile's annual flood, was everything. Without his bounty, Egypt starved. I have prepared the offerings. Priest, you reply, your voice a little shaky. The finest loaves of bread, the freshest figs, the clearest water from the sacred well. He gives a slow, approving nod. Good. Remember, it is not just the offerings that matter. In intent, the gods see into our hearts. Go now. Ablutions must be completed before the sun reaches its zenith. You bow your head and move away, feet cool on the polished stone floor. As you walk through the temple corridors, you pass other priests. In their duties, one meticulously polishing a golden statue of Sekhmet, another carefully arranging offerings of fruit and flowers. You hear the distant chanting of the morning prayers, a beautiful, hypnotic melody that washes over you. You catch the scent of sweat and incense from the scribe's chamber. Men are copying hieroglyphs onto papyrus. you see the vibrant colors of painted reliefs on the walls, pharaohs offering tribute to the gods of battles won, of life's eternal cycle. Later, you are in the temple kitchens, a surprisingly bustling place. It is warm and humid, filled with the savory aroma of roasting fowl and simmering stews. Helping to prepare a meal for the priests, a simple but nourishing repast of lentils, vegetables, and flatbread. A senior priest, his face kind but firm, oversees the preparations. You must ensure the vegetables are washed thoroughly, he instructs, his voice carrying a hint of the Nile's gentle flow. Purity is paramount even in the preparation of food. We are what we consume, must be pure. He then turns to a younger acolyte. And you, boy, a perfect golden dun brown. The gods appreciate a well-prepared offering. This is your life, a purification, ritual, study, and service. It's a life that demands absolute discipline, unwavering faith. As to the standing of your place within the grand cosmic order, it's a life that, to the modern eye, might seem restrictive, even oppressive, but for the Egyptians, it was the very foundation of their civilization, a bulwark against chaos, a conduit to the divine, testament to their enduring legacy. Your role, however small it might seem, was integral to the functioning of this colossal, ordained machine. As the day draws to a close, and you prepare for your own simple meal of bread and water, you reflect on the immense responsibility you carry. It is a weight, yes, but also a profound honor, a link in a chain that stretches back to the dawn of time and forward into an unknowable future. The intricate systems you are a part of, the knowledge you help preserve, you meticulously perform. These are the threads that weave the fabric of Egyptian society, binding the earthly realm to the divine. And as you drift off to sleep, the rhythmic chanting of the evening prayers, a lullaby, understand that the true legacy of the Egyptian priest wasn't just in grand temples or the preserved texts, but in the quiet dedication to maintaining order, both spiritual and temporal, in a world that constantly teetered on the edge of the unknown. This dedication, this unwavering commitment to the divine, shaped not just their world, human history in ways we are still only beginning to fully comprehend. You've probably heard romanticized tales about this period, but the reality was far more complex. Gilded robes and effortless divine pronouncements, you might imagine. Your days as a priest, great temple complex of Karnak, during the reign of Ramesses II, around 1279 BCE. Meticulous ritual, profound intellectual discipline, and a constant, almost crushing sense of responsibility. Day, not truly, if you expected the life of leisure often depicted. The air you breathed was thick with the scent of burning incense, frankincense, and myrrh, the earthy aroma of lotus blossoms, and the faint, ever-present smell of the Nile. The stone beneath your bare feet, smoothed by millennia of footsteps, was cool even in the midday heat. The chanting, a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the very stones of the sanctuary, was not merely background noise. It was the lifeblood of the cosmos, constant conversation with the divine. Your hands, calloused from years of preparing offerings and tending to sacred objects, would shake not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the tasks, teach you that the outward performance of piety was only the surface. Beneath it lay a rigorous intellectual foundation, countless hours studying hieroglyphs, not just for their meaning, but for their power. Each symbol was a conduit, unlocking the secrets of the universe and the will of the gods. I discovered in the papyri fragments from the Serapeum of Saqqara to the New Kingdom just how much of a priest's life was dedicated to learning, memorizing complex hymns, understanding the intricate astronomical observations that guided the temple's calendar and festivals. Imagine spending your mornings not with a newspaper, but with scrolls detailing the movements of Sirius, rising of which heralded the inundation of the Nile. Botany was crucial for the preparation of offerings, knowing which herbs were sacred to specific deities, how to properly dry and grind them, and their medicinal properties for the temple's infirmary. Simple barley bread and dates, your staple diet, would become a familiar sensation after hours of intense study or ritual purification. The rough weave of your linen kilt, bleached white by the sun, second skin, a symbol of your separation from the secular world. You would have had conversations that to our modern ears seem utterly alien, yet were deeply rooted in the human desire for order and meaning. Picture a discussion with another priest, Amenhotep, a senior member of the Oman priesthood at Karnak, his voice raspy from years of chanting, of generations of tradition. The balance. Amenhotep might say, his eyes to meet coal to protect them from the sun's glare, fixed on the distant horizon. The balance between Mayat and Isfet. Fragile thing. Our vigilance, our adherence to the rituals, it is the thread that holds it all together. A single misplaced word, inattention during the daily purification of the statue of Amun-Ra, fabric of our existence could fray. He might gesture towards the vast pylons of the temple, surfaces covered in intricate reliefs depicting pharaohs smiting enemies. These victories are not just of the sword, the spirit. They are the outward manifestation of the divine favor we cultivate within these walls. Your own response, perhaps a quiet nod, would be laced with the understanding of the immense pressure that rested upon your shoulders. The subtle scent of cooled sweat on your brow would be a constant reminder of the physical exertion required. Seemingly serene moments, bleating of goats from a nearby village, would serve as a counterpoint to the sacred sounds within the temple precinct. Teach you that the isolation, the separation from family life mentioned before, was a deliberate choice, sacrifice for a greater purpose. You would see your wife and children infrequently, perhaps during specific sanctioned festivals. Their presence would be tinged with the melancholy of their eventual departure. The touch of your child's small hand, and trusting, would be a fleeting sensation, a stark contrast to the cool, polished surfaces of the temple's inner sanctums. Recall a conversation with your wife, her voice a mixture of pride and quiet sadness. The people look to you, she might say, her fingers tracing the delicate lines of a lotus flower painted on a pottery shard. They see you as a bridge between our world and the realm of the gods. But do you ever feel the weight of that bridge? The taste of the simple meal you shared, perhaps a stew of lentils and onions, seasoned with garlic, would feel different when eaten with the knowledge of impending separation. The soft rustle of the papyrus reeds outside your modest quarters, a sound that would once have been a comfort, carry a hint of loneliness. The months teach you that the reverence for the divine extended to every aspect of life. Preparation of your own humble meals was a ritual. The careful washing of hands before handling food, the respectful arrangement of the meager provisions on a clean mat, the silent invocation before partaking, these were not mere habits, extensions of your sacred duty. I recall reading accounts of priests meticulously cleaning their living quarters of dust or stray insect marred the purity of their environment, a reflection of the divine order they were sworn to uphold. rough wool blankets upslon, a stark contrast to the luxurious silks worn by the elite outside the priesthood, a constant reminder of your chosen path, the distant cries of jackals, a sound that would send shivers down the spines of those unfamiliar with the desert night would be a familiar lullaby to you, a signal that the world outside continued its own rhythms while you remained within the sacred embrace of the temple. Teach you that your role was not passive. You were an active participant in maintaining cosmic order. Meticulous care you took in polishing the sacred vessels, ensuring that the gold leaf on the statues of deities remained untarnished. Me as Sphere's aesthetic concern, it was a vital act of ensuring the gods' favor, painstaking process of grinding lapis lazuli to create the vibrant blue pigment used to adorn the eyes of a statue of Sekhmet, lioness goddess. The fine powder would cling to your fingertips, leaving a faint blue dust that would linger long after your work was done. The conversations with fellow priests would often revolve around the practicalities of maintaining the temple, the procurement of supplies, allocation of labor for repairs, the precise timing of rituals to coincide with celestial events. Adequate for the next 6 months. One priest might report, his voice echoing slightly in the vast temple granary, thick with the scent of dried wheat and barley. But the offerings of oil for the lamps are running low. Petition the vizier for an increased allocation from the royal granaries. The months teach you that the sacrifices you made and personal tolls were understood within a framework of immense reward. You were a guardian of knowledge, divine power, and a pillar of society. The satisfaction derived from successfully performing a complex ritual, the palpable effect of your prayers on the community would be a profound, if internal, reward. The cool water from a purification basin, cleansing and refreshing after a long period of fasting, yet deeply satisfying sensation. The gentle warmth of the rising sun as it cast long shadows across the temple courtyards, the start of another day of duty, a day where your actions, however seemingly mundane, to the enduring order of Egypt. As the stars begin to emerge in the deepening twilight, the indigo sky with their ancient patterns, you too begin to drift. The echoes of chanting fade, gentle hum of your own breath. The scent of incense softens, giving way to the subtle aroma of your pillow. You carry the weight of ancient duty, not as a burden, but as a quiet understanding, a rhythm that will carry you into the next chapter of your journey through time. I've studied paint a picture that's both more mundane and more extraordinary than any epic tale. You've walked through the bustling markets of Thebes, felt the dry heat on your skin, heard the cries of vendors, grit in the air. You've glimpsed the austere devotion of those who served the gods, not in grand pronouncements, but in the quiet, rhythmic unfolding of daily life. You've learned that the priesthood wasn't a singular entity, but a spectrum of roles, high priest overseeing vast temple complexes to the humblest scribe meticulously copying hieroglyphs, seen the meticulous care taken in preparing ritualistic offerings, the precise measurements of incense burned, the careful arrangement of sacred objects within the inner sanctums. Understand now that the perceived mystique of the ancient priests was often a product of deliberate design, order and awe, in a society deeply intertwined with the divine. The weight of millennia presses down. Their routines, their very humanity, remains surprisingly accessible. Much of time reveals the intricate tapestry of their existence. Imagine yourself within the cool, shadowed halls of the Temple of Karnak, the air thick with the scent of lotus and myrrh. The stone under your bare feet is smooth, countless generations of sandals and bare soles. You are a junior priest, perhaps the morning ablutions of the sacred statues, the water drawn from the Nile before dawn, hands as you gently cleanse the granite visages of Amun-Ra, the faint murmur of chanting from another chamber, a low, resonant hum that vibrates in your chest, is your constant companion. You can almost feel the rough texture of the linen robes you wear, bleached white by the sun and starched to a crispness that rustles with every movement. The faint taste of consecrated bread, simple unleavened cake, lingers on your tongue. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight begin to pierce the high windows, ethereal shafts of light onto the hieroglyph-covered walls, you are summoned by the overseer of the treasury. He is an older priest, his face etched with the wisdom of many years, his voice a dry rasp like papyrus unrolling. "Young one," he begins, his eyes fix on you. "The king's envoy arrives today. They bring tribute from Nubia, ebony, ivory, and exotic birds. Task is to ensure the sacred vessels are polished to a mirror sheen. May observe our devotion." You feel a tremor of apprehension, a flutter in your stomach. The sheer responsibility, upholding the divine order, can be overwhelming. You nod, your throat suddenly dry. Later, you find yourself in a smaller chamber, the air heavy with the sweet, cloying aroma of frankincense. The head priest, imposing presence whose voice carries the authority of centuries, is examining a scroll. He looks up, his gaze piercing. "Formed your duties diligently," he states, a rare flicker of approval in his eyes. "But tell me, truly occupies your thoughts when you are alone, away from the rituals and the prayers?" He pauses, allowing you to consider of the quiet moments by the riverbank, watching the feluccas glide past, the distant shouts of children playing, intricate patterns of the stars that grace the night sky, the mysteries of creation. You confess hesitantly that you sometimes wonder about the lives of those outside the temple walls, the farmers tilling the fields, the artisans shaping clay. Smiles, a gentle, knowing expression. "The gods are in all things, young one," he says softly. "In the flow of the Nile, the growth of the barley, and in the hearts of all people. To serve them is to understand the interconnectedness of it all." He then gestures to a small, intricately carved wooden box. He explains, contains a rare unguent made from crushed marjoram and honey. It is for the purification of the sacred oils, with the utmost care. The slightest imperfection in its preparation could displease the divine. You can feel the smooth wood of the box beneath your fingertips, the subtle warmth it radiates, the scent of marjoram, sharp and herbaceous, with the sweetness of honey, creating an intoxicating perfume. Time reveals the subtle shifts in power and influence within the temple hierarchy. You witness the quiet machinations, worded petitions, the subtle alliances formed over shared meals of figs and dates. You observe the meticulous accounting of temple grain, the management of vast estates that sustained the priesthood and the populace. That the priests were not merely conduits to the divine, but also administrators, scholars, physicians, and architects. In dusty archives unearthed from the sands near Abydos, that a particular priest, named Imhotep, teamed Djoser around 26667-2648 BCE, only a high priest of Ptah, but also a renowned architect and physician, later deified for his achievements. The roles were fluid, and that exceptional individuals could transcend the confines of their initial duties, understand the immense pressure of maintaining the cosmic order, the constant vigilance required to keep the forces of chaos at bay, the meticulous adherence to ritual, precise pronunciation of incantations, the unwavering devotion. These were not mere acts of faith, components of a cosmic balance. You realize that a single mistake, a moment of distraction, could have far-reaching consequences. Individual priest, but for the entire land. The weight of this responsibility is palpable, beneath the surface of your daily life. You can almost taste the anxiety that must have gripped those who carried such burdens. Time reveals the profound impact of these individuals on the very fabric of Egyptian society. Astronomy guided agricultural practices. Their understanding of medicine healed the sick, and administrative skills ensured the smooth functioning of the state. You see how the rituals they performed were not abstract pronouncements, ingrained practices that fostered social cohesion and provided a framework for understanding the world of their lives. Dictated by the sun and the Nile, mirrored the rhythm of the land itself. Now, as the day draws to a close, prick the velvet sky above the temple complex, you find yourself reflecting on the immense, often unseen, labor of these ancient servants. You feel the coolness of the night air on your skin, carrying the faint scent of the Nile. Chirping of crickets provides a gentle counterpoint to the profound silence that has settled over the sacred precinct. You have walked in their sandals, breathed their air, and glimpsed the immense weight of their responsibilities. It is a humbling realization, lived in service, a life that demanded far more than most could ever imagine. As you prepare for your own rest, of their dedication, their quiet resilience, and their profound connection to the divine will linger, a soft lullaby for your weary soul. The echoes of their devotion will accompany you as you drift into the quiet embrace of sleep.